que salta del cómic al...
He thought he was in control. How wrong he was.
Hey, what's up? It's Shane with Dynamis Media, and I'm joined here with Stefan.
That's me.
And you're tuning into the Dark Side Drive-In, which is our horror-themed podcast, where we go through the best movies of the 80s, sometimes 90s, and sometimes 70s. And
I like that you've been adding that in so that we're covered when we do that, since we haven't yet. But yeah,
it's
that way we don't get called out for it on the internet.
I'm priming the pump, you know what I mean?
We don't get roasted in the comments.
Yeah, don't at me. Or do at me, actually. That's one thing. Please add us. I still don't really know what that means, and I'm kind of afraid to ask, but other famous people say it, so I thought maybe I'd give it a shot. But
I think it's like internet stuff, so like as long as you say it confidently, then you seem like you are a source of truth. So continue to say it confidently.
Yeah, so I was with Kevin the other day, and he said something, "Oh man, that's mid." I'm like, "Kevin, you've been spending too much time with your students." Like, adults don't say mid. I guess we kind of do. I don't know, but anyways.
I mean, I've never described anything as mid, but I have felt things are mid. So I guess if that's what we're doing, if we can't just say mediocre, because usually if I think something is mid, I'll say it's mediocre, but I'll say it like the bad guy from Mad Max Fury Road,
which is
mediocre. Remember that when he's yelling at Nicholas Holt's character? Yeah. Immortan Joe, that was the name of the bad guy.
Immortan Joe.
Yeah, that's such a good movie.
Yeah, welcome to our Mad Max podcast. So, why don't you get us kicked off with we have some pretty cool announcements with what we're doing right now.
Yeah, it would have been cool if we planned it a little better ahead of time, but you know what? We're figuring this out. We're really doing it. And we mentioned doing a slasher block for the summer because you know, summers always get me in a slashy mood. I don't know about anyone else. Well, not slashy, like experience slashing. Not that I'm going to slash. All right, Shane, edit that out.
Yeah.
Because I don't want to be held responsible for any slasher murders that happen in the area.
Any slashes that may or may not occur.
Yeah, I was definitely not involved. I don't have the equipment for it or the patience.
Right.
So there's that. But anyways, so we've decided to call this little mini block of 3 films the Summer Tri-Slash-A-Thon. Isn't that a great name?
That's awesome.
Yeah. So like the Summer Tri-Slash-A-Thon is going to kick off with our movie tonight, which is The Prowler. Ooh. Super excited to get into this, especially after something of a low point with our last episode in terms of movie quality.
You don't say.
Movie quality, narrative coherence, overall enjoyment.
Oh, I do have an update for that, but I'll let you keep going.
I mean, I just wanted to talk about the Summer Tri-Slash-A-Thon. It's basically going to be 3 movies. These episodes are going to land so is it going to be the middle week of July, like the Monday, the 17th of July for this one, which I guess our listeners will know because they won't see it until then. But that's time, maybe. And then the next one will be the 31st of July. And then the last one then will be the 14th of August. So nestled right in the season of slash, as they say. No one's ever said that, but I just did.
I feel like our merch is going to go like off the chain once we like start making this stuff. We have like Smash Cut. We have that. Would you just say the Summer of Slash? Is that what you said?
The Summer of Slash?
Yeah. Is that what you just said?
Yeah, I think I did. I didn't really plan it though.
Okay.
So yeah, we'll have to check the tape on that. But yeah, and then Summer Tri-Slash-A-Thon. Unless you were just lying to me when you said you thought it was a cool name and you just got me to say it for all of our listeners to hear and you're actually secretly making fun of me.
No, so like when you came up with that, so listeners, our biggest problem was we're like, well, we want to do 4 of them, but we couldn't like come up with or you couldn't come up with I couldn't either, but you couldn't come up with a catchy name for 4 like quad slash-a-thon or something. But so yeah, we had to cut one out of the running. It'll probably make a comeback here in maybe a couple months. So,
well, that is the thing. We kind of waited like a little further into summer than I would have liked to have started the slasher block. So maybe next time we can come up with another way to brand it next summer, and then kind of plan it out a little bit better. Although I'm kind of proud of the amount of planning we did. We have like 3 movies lined up that we're ready to do.
Yeah, totally.
And one of them is what we're talking about today. So I guess 2 more for the audience. But yeah, so I think we've done a great job. I'm going to give us a pat on the back for that.
We could do a buy Tri-Slash-A-Thon.
So so 5?
I think, right?
Are there enough weeks? Are there enough I don't think the summer lasts that long, does it?
Last,
'Cause that would be 10 weeks.
I don't know. We'll figure it out. But so, hey,
Yeah,
quick update on the Supernaturals. I was able to find a German copy that has a DVD, which I'm hoping is an HD version. So it's currently in the mail. So we'll keep you guys posted. But
do you believe that will be HD?
I'm praying because I shipped it from fucking Germany or England or something. So we'll find
there isn't
out.
a lot about the look of it that leads me to believe that this will be any better than what we've seen.
Almost
but you know what?
nothing.
Maybe Europe takes better care of movies and they'll send that to you in a better condition.
Apparently, that is the only way for you to get that movie on any media outside of VHS is from that exact German version, which makes no sense. So, or maybe it was just super popular in Germany. For all of our German listeners, let us know. But yeah. So,
and V Heisensie.
yeah.
Oh wait, no, that's what your name,
Yeah.
isn't it? V Gates. That's how are you, right?
I think.
Well, look it up, and if I did it wrong, then edit that out.
Okay.
Because I don't want the Duolingo owl to hunt me down. Because I've been doing German for a while, and if I mess that up, I'm going to be murdered by the Duolingo owl.
Oh, man.
Did you do the housekeeping yet? Because I had something to do after housekeeping, but I haven't been paying a ton of attention to where we were in our plan today.
So for housekeeping, we have not a lot of news. So again, our other shows are taking a little bit of a break. We're gonna still kind of go steady with every other week. I think one of the hosts is moving, so not to get too inside baseball or inside of what's going on. So I think once he gets to where he's going to go, everything will be kind of back on track. But for us, nothing's going to change. Same bat time, same bat channel. So should be good.
Yeah, easy. Done.
So
I guess the thing I'm going to apologize about this time, because that's kind of one of our things now, is we apologize about stuff we get wrong. When I was talking about some of the musical cues in the Supernaturals, I did use the term soft motifs. The actual term, and ironically, is from the German. It is leitmotifs. It's one word. McMurray actually texted me the word like that the day he was listening to that episode. And I was like, in my defense, though, I had never seen the term written. I just heard him say it when we were at that Nosferatu screening. So I can't be really held responsible for not having what's the word? Closed captioning in real life to see the word he was saying. So I was just capturing it in my brain mind and I mixed it up. So yeah, leitmotifs. Sorry for anyone who's really into, musical theory and you were like, what the hell is this guy thinking? Saying soft motifs like it's some kind of English bullshit. So there you go. Sorry for everyone who knows music. I'll try to do better.
I mean, there's always one, so I'm sure you made someone happy for correcting yourself.
Probably just McMurray.
Again, there's always one.
That's the one.
All right, so like you said, we're getting into the Prowler. I absolutely love this movie. I've watched it a couple times now, and man, this thing goes hard right from the go. But I don't want to get too ahead of ourselves, but I think we needed something like this as a palate cleanser to get us through what happened to us last time. So yeah, I don't know. Is there anything, any cool little facts or anything about the writers or directors?
Yeah. I have notes here, and it's one of the few times that I've actually took a deep dive on the writers, and the reason why will become clear when I get there. But yeah, The Prowler is directed by Joseph Zito, who doesn't have a long list of credits, but the ones that he does have are pretty notable. He started out his career with Abduction and Blood Rage, which are kind of lower budget movies. Some of the ones that he's probably more popular to, especially fans of action movies starring Chuck Norris, are Missing in Action and Invasion USA, which are both starring Chuck Norris, big action movies. He had a later movie called Delta Force One: The Lost Patrol, which had another Norris in it, but I didn't recognize the name, so I'm assuming it's somebody related to Chuck Norris, because I know that he used to work a lot with his brother Aaron Norris on a lot of things. He was like a big action choreographer with him and stuff like that. So it was like a later effort. There was another one that was like another kind of 80s action movie called Red Scorpion, which starred none other than Dolph Lundgren. So jot that down, everybody. Add that to your instant queue. I actually have no idea where it's streaming, but I thought that was a cool one.
It's actually, that's actually not a bad movie. I mean, so like when you say bad, like air quotes, bad movie, you know, a lot of those 80s action movies are kind of the same, right? But I love Dolph Lundgren movies. So if you're into those old school 80s action movies, this one's actually pretty good. So
yeah. And then probably the only other major like horror feature, and I believe, and this might be, I hope this is true, but I believe that he got the job for Friday the 13th, the final chapter, directing that film based off of the strength of this film. Because this one wasn't as big of a movie. This was a smaller one. It wasn't a known property. It was kind of a one-off slasher, but it was successful enough and, you know, capably directed enough that they gave him a shot at, you know, a Friday the 13th. Obviously, I don't have to tell anyone else. That's a pretty big property. Like, people know it. Still limps on, I believe. Yeah. I don't think have they made one since Freddy versus Jason?
No, I think Halloween had that resurgence. Didn't they just do a Nightmare on Elm Street like reboot or something like that? Isn't that coming out?
They did, but it was not great.
Yeah, so
they did a Friday the 13th reboot as well, which I actually thought was decently effective. But I thought that Freddy versus Jason had actually come out after that, after both of their successive reboots.
Well, they're doing that Crystal Lake
kind of
show.
Ignored it.
So that's like the new thing. They're doing the Crystal Lake, which I think is supposedly linked to that like universe. So I'm pretty sure so this might be a television like series for Friday the 13th.
Okay, yeah, I didn't know about that, but
oh, dude, you should check out the trailer. It looks pretty awesome.
Yeah, but no, I was actually wrong. So the Friday the 13th reboot was 2009, it looks like, and then the Nightmare on Elm Street reboot, when was that one? 2010, from what I can tell. Both of them, like I said, not great. I would say that the Friday the 13th one fared a little bit better. I do think that there was some good ideas in the Nightmare on Elm Street reboot. Like you did have Jackie Earle Haley putting in a decent performance as Freddy Krueger. Problem being that that's a role that's so tied with Robert Englund's character. Like it's like almost hard to like put anyone else in the mask, no matter how good of an actor they are.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how you top his performance at all.
No, exactly. And I guess I'm kind of getting really off base here because this wasn't even related to Joseph Zito, but there you go. Covered Joseph Zito's credits. Only a handful, but I would say it's a pretty big handful. Like these are known movies for the most part. Like he made a dent in 80s culture. Let me go to the writers.
I'm excited for this.
Yeah, did I explain to you why this is so weird, or did I decide I wanted to surprise you?
No, you said you were going to surprise me, but the one writer wrote one of my favorite shows. So
okay,
so we'll get there.
So there were actually there are, I think it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. There are 6 credited writers on this. There's Glenn Leopold and Neil Barbara, but then there's additional dialogue by Eric Lewald, Mark Edward Edens, and Michael Edens, who are brothers. And then there's like a separate Rosemary's Letter, which is read like by one of the characters. Or no, the letter is done via voiceover by Rosemary, and that was written by somebody named Sarah Higgins. And just getting this out of the way right now, Sarah Higgins did not have any other credits on IMDb. This is it. Rosemary's Letter was her one, and it was great.
It was
10
good.
out of 10. But
would read again.
Would read again. Gotta love them Dear John letters. But so the reason that these guys were so surprising for me is I think that Glenn Leopold and Neil Barbara had both written a horror film called Too Scared to Scream, which is another slasher movie. But beyond that, every single one of these dudes did almost exclusively children's shows and mostly cartoons.
Oh, yeah.
Every single one. like your Scooby-Doos, like different Scooby-Doos too, like Scooby and Scrappy-Doo, 13 Ghosts of Scooby-Doo, like Super Friends, like Snorks, the Jetsons, Paw Paw Bears, New Adventures of Johnny Quest, even then later, The Real Adventures of Johnny Quest, Shane. So both versions of the Adventures of Johnny Quest.
So this guy, this isn't my favorite show. This is up there though. SWAT Cats, like fucking awesome.
SWAT Cats Radical Squadron. Let me see. I have it written down here.
So good. That show, I had all the toys. I absolutely loved that show.
Yeah. Which one was that? That was one of the guys.
Glenn Leopold.
Specifically. Was that Glenn Leopold? His was huge. Yeah. Because he had Biker Mice from Mars.
Okay.
He had,
that's another one
Pirates
too.
of the Dark Water. Yep. Yeah. The Pirates of the Dark Water. Little remembered, but great show. And then he did like the Godzilla animated series. Yeah, so Neil Barbara had done like Birdman, Banana Splits, Pebbles and Bam Bam, Scooby-Doo's Laugh Olympics. But then he'd done like Tom and Jerry Kids, which was rad. So there's so many times where like they would cross paths, but then kind of diverge paths. Because like Eric Lewald and then both of the Edens brothers, they seem to do a lot of work with like Disney cartoons. I think that they shared like credits on New Adventures of Winnie the Pooh, Darkwing Duck, Tailspin, Chip and Dale Rescue Rangers. I think that they all had stints on the various Spider-Man and X-Men animated series. Some of the funnier ones were like the Edens brothers had like the Disney Channel original movie called Don't Look Under the Bed, which was surprisingly scary for a Disney Channel original movie. I don't know if you remember that one.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it's like about the boogeyman like hiding under your bed and stuff. So like it's just so wild to me that almost with like one exception, almost all of these dudes were like doing nothing but children's cartoons, and sometimes just regular children's shows, because I think a few of them had Banana Splits credits. But how crazy is that?
It is crazy. So Eric Lewald, like obviously X-Men animated series, one of my favorite shows of all time. I absolutely love it. He was a story editor. He did some development, and then was also like a writer creator for that series, which is awesome. But
he also was involved in Gargoyles.
I was just going to say,
Mummy's Alive.
So he did Street Fighter, the animated series. He did Gargoyles. Okay. He also did the Beetlejuice show. Remember that show?
Yes.
So he was all over like Chip and Dale, like Darkwing Duck, Tailspin, like all those shows. So like these guys like defined my childhood Saturday mornings, like, which is crazy to think about. Watch, because you like, if anyone hasn't seen the Prowler, and then we're talking about these cartoons and you don't understand the irony that we're trying to get through here, like it is crazy some of the shit that happens in this movie. And then you look at their credits and it's just like, yeah, we do kids cartoons. It's like, holy shit. So
did you notice that the Edens brothers also had a hand in Reboot?
Yep. It's
Love
crazy.
Reboot.
It's so crazy.
I think that a couple of them had both original versions of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and then later versions of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, which, let's be honest, not all of the later ones are winners, but it's just crazy to be attached to different iterations of Ninja Turtles throughout the generations.
Dude, this guy wrote Mummy's Alive. I didn't even know that. That's crazy.
Yeah, actually a couple of them had Mummy's Alive credits. At some point I started repeating myself, and I hoped I'd remember which ones are like the same and which ones aren't, but I unfortunately don't. But like, but it was crazy how many times they would like cross paths like on their journey. And there was definitely two of them that did Mummy's Alive. It might've been Mark Edward Edens and then also Eric Lewald, who both were involved with Mummy's Alive, which is a show that I forgot existed until I read the words.
But not to like, so if anyone's really into old cartoons, I really recommend checking out SWAT Cats and Biker Mice from Mars. The Biker Mice from Mars it was so cool. And then they had all these crazy action figures that went with it. So yeah, definitely give that one a watch. It's worth it.
Yeah, I should have planned ahead and tried to see where some of those were like streaming. Because I'll be honest, I'd love to get my hands on some of like Real Adventures of Johnny Quest. Just because I remember that show being like really good when I was a kid, and it's like, it can't actually be good though, right?
It's like, I don't know who owns the rights. So that's the other thing. I don't know who owns the rights to some of these shows. Like, even if you look at the Biker Mice,
I think a lot of these are Hanna-Barbera properties, aren't they?
Mhm.
So that's owned by Cartoon Network, which I think is unfortunately now under the control of like
HBO,
Warner
right?
Brothers. Well, it's Warner Brothers, and you have that Zaslav guy who's basically hemorrhaging their content out, like farming it out to everybody. So who knows where it would end up. But Biker Mice from Mars might not be, though.
I can't find it. Like, it looks like you have to buy it. So that's kind of a bummer with some of these old shows and cartoons. Like, you'll never like be able to see some of them unless you like could find the DVD box set or find a streaming service that actually has them. Because honestly, I don't even think you can get it on Amazon. I think you have to buy it. Because there was a reboot, and I know way too much about this show. In 2006, I think that one's readily available. Like, you can find that stuff. But the original,
a reboot of what?
The Biker Mice series.
There's a reboot of that?
Yeah, they had a 2006 version. I think you worked on that one too. So yeah, I know too much.
Oh, I might have missed that if that's the case. Sorry about that. But I knew that the original Biker Mice from Mars was like co-created by Stan Lee, and everything he did is like owned by Disney now. So why isn't it on Disney Plus? Tell me that one, Disney.
Yeah, I don't know. And that was a really weird IP. But yeah. So Glenn Leopold
was
wrote
the
an
idea
episode
that there was motorcycle riding mice
from Mars,
from the planet Mars. Yeah, no, that sounds like totally normal. What are you talking about?
Totally.
How's that weird?
I think we should move on from Biker Mice from Mars because I'll take up the whole episode talking about it.
I mean, that's kind of the thing is like this one's actually a movie that we want to get to. So yeah, I don't want to spend too much time on everyone's credits. But I say those words and I look at the next name on my list. And it's one of Pittsburgh's favorite sons, Tom Savini.
Horns playing.
Yeah, add the proper fanfare for this man.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I mean, I even have like, I don't know how much you want me to go into his credits because we're going to encounter him again on this podcast.
All the time.
His movies are going to come up. But like, special effects work with like, Martin, Dawn of the Dead. Martin, of course, being a lesser known George Romero film. I'm sure I have to tell horror fans that. He had movies like Nightmare Midnight, Friday the 13th, then Friday the 13th, The Final Chapter, which he worked on obviously with Joseph Zito. Creepshow 1 and 2. Although I think that in number 2, his role, he actually was mostly an actor in that. He wasn't doing special effects work. I think he played the creep in that. He was obviously involved in Tales from the Dark Side, one of the shows that I love bringing up. He did special effects on Red Scorpion, the Dolph Lundgren movie that was also directed by Joseph Zito. And I was actually surprised to see he worked with Joseph Zito on like Invasion USA as well. Because I always think, whenever I think of him, I think of his, work with George Romero, which obviously is even more. There's like Monkey Shines and other things like that. But the idea that he worked, a handful of times with Joseph Zito as well just goes to show that like, Tom Savini just like finds certain people that he works well with and he just goes for it. More recently, he had actually designed the Killer's Mask from The Black Phone, that Ethan Hawke movie,
really?
The horror movie. Yeah. I didn't know that. That was actually something that came up in my research. But yeah, like so many other movies, Deranged, Maniac, Day of the Dead, Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2, which I think is an underrated Texas Chainsaw Massacre because a lot of people didn't like it at the time, but if they knew how off the rails that franchise was going to go, they might have been more forgiving.
So 3 was one with Vigo, right?
What?
Texas Chainsaw Massacre 3 had Viggo Mortensen in it, or how do you say his last name? Viggo Mortensen?
I think it's Mortensen, yeah, but like, was he?
Yeah. Dude, that was a fucking wild movie. Have you ever seen that movie? Hold on, let me make sure this is the right one. God.
I mean, I'll just be honest, I'm not the biggest fan of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre franchise.
So another thing that we should probably say too, like we need to stop spending so much time not talking to each other because we end up getting together and we'll talk for hours about stupid shit. Yeah, Vigo, he's in Texas Chainsaw Massacre 3. That's a pretty wild movie. So that one's we should actually watch that one. I don't know if we would do it for this, but
I always think about like Matthew McConaughey was in one of the ones like the New Generation or the Next Generation. I can't remember what it was. Like one of the
he's in the newer ones.
One of the abortive sort of changes in direction. That's the thing about the Texas Chainsaw Massacre franchise is it goes into. Have you ever looked at like a timeline for that franchise? Like how many different timelines there are? And some of them diverge, and some later movies are sequels to earlier movies, and some even later movies are sequel to like middle movies and stuff like that. We won't have to go into it right now, but like there's some crazy stuff going on with that. Kind of going back to Tom Savini real fast. He was a director of a few episodes of Tales from the Dark Side. So he was like both on the special effects and the directing side for that television program. He did direct the 1990 Night of the Living Dead remake. He directed Dead Time Stories Volume 1, The Theater Bazaar. There was an episode in the new Creep Show series on Shudder, which is actually, I really like that series a lot. He doesn't, and then probably one of the funner ones, especially for like, I know a lot of people who, or I guess not now, but a lot of the shows on our network were video game focused and probably will continue to be, is Tom Savini was visual effects supervisor and producer on Friday the 13th, the game.
The NES one?
No, the new one.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, the asynchronous multiplayer one.
Okay. Wow, that's awesome. The game's and pretty, like, if you've ever seen that game, it's pretty cool. Like they did a really good job.
I actually haven't played it. I'm not a big fan of asynchronous multiplayer games.
Oh, I won't play it, but it looks cool.
Yeah. Well, now that I know that he's involved in it, maybe I will check it out. It can't be that expensive right now, right?
No, actually, I don't know. And Steam has that sale right now, so like, it's probably pretty cheap on the computer. But so with they did a really good job at like staying faithful to like the characters. So like, you play as like the different camp people, like the counselors. So like, and then like various characters that show up through the movie. Like it's actually pretty cool. They did a really good job, surprisingly. Like, cause like that type of gameplay, I mean, it's been around for a while, but like Dead by Daylight really kind of made that take off, that style of play.
Yeah, it kind of ate a lot of other horror games lunch too, especially asynchronous ones, just because there's constant content releases for Dead by Daylight. And I feel like it's hard for other games to keep up no matter what.
So apparently,
and honestly, asynchronous multiplayer is not a easy genre to play either. Sorry to interrupt.
No, you're good. You're fine. No, but apparently there's a Nick Cage DLC coming out for Dead by Daylight, and I don't know if it's a meme or not. And I just like,
oh no, that's real, my friend.
Oh, is it really? Oh, it's wild.
Yeah, he was at one of the, I think it was at Summer Games Fest. He was at one of the recent game shows promoting that.
Holy fuck, it's wild. You should look up the voice dialogue that he does for that game. I'm like, someone did an awesome impersonation of him, but it's really him. It's crazy.
If the one that I heard on TikTok is real, then that's wild to me, because most of the other characters, like the player characters, don't speak really.
Right.
So that's going to be interesting, an interesting change to that game.
Definitely.
But yeah, let me move on to some of our cast members here. Luckily, not a lot of them. Well, a couple of them have very lengthy credits, but I'm going to try to focus up on just the ones that are kind of our main characters. So our final girl is Pam McDonald, as played by Vicky Dawson. She has been working pretty consistently, but not in very much interesting stuff, sorry to say. She was in a movie called Breaking Up and 5 episodes of Another World, which is one of those, what do you call them, soap opera things. Carbon Copy. She was in like 3 ABC after school specials, which, there you go. 5 episodes of As the World Turns, another soap opera. Something called Those She Left Behind, Gift of the Magi, About Hope. A lot of those look kind of like Hallmark movies, but I don't think they are. But I'm sure there's a market for that kind of content anyway.
Like a Turner Classic kind of thing, or like AMC, or not AMC, like a
absolutely
A&E.
Not Turner Classic. What are you talking?
Don't they have those? Don't they have those like Sunday like movie things where they like make those like made for TV movies and they show them?
Yeah, my experience with Turner Classic Movies is usually classic movies. Like
maybe I'm thinking A&E.
Yeah, it could be A&E. I don't know.
I will not.
Don't they usually do,
guys, I will not apologize for this. So,
well, you're gonna apologize if Warner Brothers shutters Turner Classic Movies and you just went and badmouth them,
or sues us, I guess, for defamation.
No, they're not. I think that Zaslav's more likely to close it because he's a terrible person. But yeah. So, and then our final guy, as it were, is going to be Mark London.
Inexplicably final guy.
Yeah, man. I still don't understand.
We'll get there.
Anyway, we'll get it there. Yeah. Played by Christopher Goutman. He had a handful of acting credits. He was in some Charlie's Angels episodes, The Edge of Night, Goodbye New York, George Washington 2, The Forging of a Nation, which makes me wonder what was going on in George Washington 1. If like one of the things he was most known for is The Forging of a Nation. What was the first movie? He was also a director for The Edge of Night, which was a show, I found out. And it turns out his directing credits are like way more prolific than his acting ones. He directed like 72 episodes of All My Children, 148 episode of As the World Turns, a number of other episodes for like Another World, The Young and the Restless, Days of Our Lives. So I guess like he was just the director of choice for basically any, soap operas during that time, which is probably for the best. I'm not gonna like his performance in this is fine. He really didn't seem like he was at ease with his character or his presence here. And I get that maybe that's the character, is he's supposed to seem like he doesn't know what he's doing.
Well, he also,
I guess next I'll just talk about.
He also,
sorry, go ahead.
He also produced 1,600 episodes of As the World Turns. So he was a producer for the show for 11 years, which, like, if you know anything about soap operas, that's absolutely crazy. So not only was he directing, so when I first saw that, I'm like, okay, he definitely acted on the show, and he didn't. So he's not just
never.
like tagged on as a producer to get more money or get an office. Like, this guy actually produced this stuff. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not afraid to admit I don't really understand much about like the production of soap operas, but it really does seem like he was involved in that in some degree. So good for him. It's good to keep working. Next up, I guess I'll bring up Major Chatham. Even though he doesn't appear a lot, is a pretty big name, which is Hollywood tough guy Lawrence Tierney, Dillinger himself.
Yeah.
I don't know if there's anything in particular that you wanted to bring up in his credits, because I know he has a ton of them. I was going to bring up that he was in Tales from the Dark Side. So jot that down.
You should get a button and you can just press that and it just does it.
Yep. Yeah. He was in Naked Gun. Some horror movies he was in were like From a Whisper to a Scream, which is one I was telling you about that I would maybe like to do for this podcast at some point. House 3, which House, kind of an underrated series. I don't think House 3 is the strongest installment, but House is pretty good. And not to be mixed up with the Japanese series House. There's an American one that's very different. I guess like Born to Kill, The Ghost Ship, Shakedown, Reservoir Dogs. Like, a lot of movies where he's a tough
Okay, you're
guy.
like hopping over Reservoir Dogs. So if anyone is like, who the hell is this guy? He plays Joe Cabot in Reservoir Dogs. So like, you've definitely seen this guy if you like Tarantino films.
Well, here's the thing about both Tarantino films and Reservoir Dogs. I'm not a big fan of either those things.
You don't say.
Yeah, so about to get myself canceled by our listeners, because I'm sure they're all fans. Next up is Sheriff George Frazier, as played by Farley Granger, which is a fun name. He was in some Hitchcock films, Rope, Strangers on a Train, some other movies, or Death Will Have Your Eyes, Death Mask. A lot of TV work throughout the 70s, Hawaii Five-0, $6 Million Man, One Life to Live. Edge of Night, which kind of probably brought him in contact with Christopher Goutman, who had directed and acted in Edge of Night. Or maybe didn't bring him in contact, but it's an interesting intersection of their careers. And you know what else Farley Granger is?
I was just going to make a joke, and I'm glad you went there.
He was in Tales
Son
from the
of a
Dark
bitch.
Side. And Shane, and he was in the companion series Monsters. he did the whole gamut. Moving on, there's a character called
God, you
Lisa.
missed Murder, She Wrote, and As the World Turns. Come on.
Here's the thing. I kind of get tired of bringing up soap operas, and I also kind of get tired of bringing up Murder, She Wrote. Because basically, here's the thing, audience. If there's an actor who had any kind of name for themselves in the 80s, they were probably in Murder, She Wrote. Because the thing ran for like 1,000 episodes, and they had to have like basically all new characters for like every episode, because you'd have murderers and people who knew the murderers and stuff like that, like any long-running crime show. So they're gonna be in Murder, She Wrote.
It's like their version of Law and Order for us.
That's true.
Yeah.
And well, there are others feel like
Yeah.
I feel like Murder, She Wrote seems to come up way more often for some reason. Anyways, back to what I was doing, which was going on to Cindy Weintraub, who plays Lisa. Humanoids from the Deep and Baker's Dozen. There, got it in 2. That was like, she had 3 credits, this and those 2 things. Humanoids from the Deep, of course, being a particularly trashy Roger Corman film. So can't recommend that one. Although there was an episode that Joe Bob Briggs did on the last drive-in where he showed humanoids from the deep.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it was a Roger Corman double feature. I think that night he did, admittedly not great transfer of the original version of Little Shop of Horrors.
There you go.
Little Shop of Horrors. So yeah, there was like, because that was the earlier one was another Roger Corman one. And then they followed up with the kind of 80s trash that is humanoids from the deep. So, but there were interesting conversations during that. Like in the interview portion that Joe Bob Briggs did was interesting, even if the movie itself is kind of like, maybe want to keep your hands off of that one. There's Paul, played by Brian Englund, who is actually the son of Cloris Leachman and filmmaker George Englund, who would actually die not long after this. He only lived to be 30. So kind of a bummer to start out on. He was only in a handful of things: Crazy Mama, Slumber Party 57, A Christmas to Remember, Vegas Strip War. So his career was unfortunately cut short. There is Sherry, as played by Lisa Dunsheath. I don't know if it's Dunsheath or Dunsheath. She was in They All Laughed, Will, the autobiography of G. Gordon Liddy, Eddie Macon's Run, some one-off TV episodes. She didn't have the biggest career. I'd say that her career was a little bit more outside of this. I think that she was like in like a model and stuff like that. It was more her speed.
Mm-hmm.
There's her boyfriend Carl, which we'll get to in the plot synopsis, but Carl is played by David Cederholm. He was in The Hunt for Red October and Beastmaster 2 Through the Portal of Time. So he doesn't have the biggest resume, but like when you get bangers like that, you know, how big of a resume do you need? Oh, Sally, as played by Diane Rode. Literally this. This is it. This was her one. I expected you to react.
No,
to
I was
that
just messing with you now. Did a pregnated pause to see if you would how you would react.
I don't think it's pregnated pause. It's pregnant pause, but sometimes I don't know what we're even doing here. Anyways, then Sally's boyfriend, Ben, played by Tom Bray. He has some good ones. Prince of Darkness, the John Carpenter film. Mm-hmm. Deep Star 6. He's also in House 3, the horror show with Lawrence Tierney, which is a cool little intersection for them. Miss Allison is played by Donna Davis. She has some Law & Order credits, both the OG and in Criminal Intent. Wings, and kind of a funnier credit. She was in Vigilante 8, The Second Offense.
Love that game.
The sequel to Vigilante 8.
So good.
Yeah. So those who don't know, Vigilante 8 was a car combat series that didn't last long. And it was during the PlayStation era?
Yeah, PlayStation 1.
Series was around? Yeah, PlayStation 1.
Yeah, it was.
It came for the Twisted Metal crown, and I don't think it claimed it, but it gave it its all.
God, that game was so good. There's another one. We don't have to get into that. That's a whole different animal. But yeah, right. I love Vigilante 8.
We're almost to the end here. Just a couple more characters that I want to bring up just because I'm going to bring them up during the synopsis. And I think
I like
to give them their due. Yep. There's Otto, as played by Bill Hugh Collins. It was just this and then a movie called Splits, so he had very few. There's a guy named Old Man Turner. I don't know that they call him Old Man Turner, or I just do.
I think you just
played by Dan Lounsbury, who's in Mannequin, Twisted, and Crocodile Dundee. So there you go. And then the only one left is Joy Glackham, who played Rosemary, who is in this and then The Children. So she didn't have a ton of stuff on her resume, which makes sense. I guess she gets pretty swiftly murdered in this. But it's kind of funny because this film in particular has kind of famous other title to it, which is Rosemary's Killer.
Mm-hmm. Which makes sense.
And it's it's the European title, and it's like taken from, I think in the trailer there's like a line that's like Rosemary's Killer has come back to town or something like that. The idea that the Prowler committed the murder in the 40s of Rosemary and then is now killing again. So
man, there's that German title makes way more sense now that you said that. Because I saw some of the European like posters, because I was gonna post something, probably still will, but by the time you hear this, you'd have already seen it. But some of the European posters are amazing. They're so good. I mean, I'm definitely a minimalist when it comes to posters and artwork. Absolutely love the black and white with the guy with the pitchfork going up the hill, like the Prowler, and then it just has the writing in the center. I absolutely love it. But if you have a chance, go check out some of the other like movie posters for this that came out in Europe. They're so cool.
Yeah, I think I know one of them you're talking about, isn't it? Like there's like a profile shot of like the dude in like the helmet and stuff
Yeah.
like that. And then it's like it says Rosemary's Killer at the bottom.
Yeah.
And like on the left it says it will make your blood run cold
Yep.
or something like that. There's actually a website that I buy t-shirts from a lot that has that on a shirt. The only problem is the shirt is red and I only wear black t-shirts. So I'm like, I don't know what I'm going to do about this.
Oh man.
But it is that shirt and it does look really cool. So,
That does look cool. Well, I think good.
No. That was really cool how we both went. We're like
Yeah.
professionals now, and we know when it's time to like shift gears to our next segment.
Both trying to transition with what's your line? No one shall be seated when we transition into the plot synopsis.
Yeah. Plot synopsis. No one will be seated. And then I'm sure you'll do some kind of weird effects, or you won't, just to mess with me. I never know what you're gonna do with these.
To be honest with you, I don't either. But
loving it.
Dude, this movie. So you know how some of these horror movies have like a really slow beginning and build? Like, hell no. This thing came right out of the gate like, hey, we're gonna let people know what the fuck we're about. Like, I absolutely thought this was one of the best intros to a horror movie I've seen in a long time. So I'm so into it.
Okay, so like we tell people in advance, what movie we're going to do and everything like that. The idea of that is both so that people feel like they're talking about it with us, but another reason, especially with a movie like this, is it has like a whodunit quality to it. There's a lot of red herrings throughout about who the murderer could be. And I think you and I have to decide right now, are we going to pretend that we don't know, or are we going to, like, while we talk about the plot, hang a bell on those moments that are like, this is a red herring. This is them trying to tell us that this is like just when it's a misdirect. You know what I mean?
Man, that's a good question. So,
it's probably something I should have brought up before we were recording, I guess.
No, that's cool. I mean, we can take most of this out too if we have to, but yeah,
I kind of like the idea because I feel like it really makes the movie look good for the number of times that it's trying to fake you out with who could be it. So I kind of want to say, like, no, this isn't the killer, or no, this is foreshadowing who the real killer is, like those kinds of things. And I feel like I can't do that if I don't just say, here's who the killer is. And then all the times that it is either trying to make us think it's somebody else, or it's like trying to give like a alibi to somebody who's like possibly a killer. I think those are effective moments, but I think they're less effective if you don't know that the person either is or isn't the killer. You know what I mean?
Okay. So I think we can leave this conversation tonight. This is good because
I think it's important because I want to give our audience the chance to, if you care about who the killer is, if you care about the mystery, I think we've kind of landed. Tell me if I'm not reading like how you're talking about it right. I think we're gonna spoil it. So if you don't want that spoiled and you really want to like experience this, maybe pause this, go watch it, and then come on back, and then you can talk about the thing you just watched with us.
Yeah, and they do. This is a very. So I'll be honest with you. I'm usually good at figuring this stuff out pretty quickly. I had a little suspicion at first, but I'm like, I don't know. And then they did such a great job at misleading you like the entire time. But yeah, I think
there were some really subtle misdirects too, like that were references to things that were referenced in like the early scene in the 40s.
Yes.
It's kind of wild.
So I think we would be doing the movie a disservice if we skipped over that stuff. I think we have to point it out because honestly, some of the things I didn't even notice the first time I watched it. Like, to be honest with you, like, cause I mean, like, I'm like, I remember them like referencing stuff, but like until I went back and watched it again, I'm like, holy shit. So yeah, I think we would be doing a disservice to this movie if we didn't talk about like the cool tricks that they did.
All right, cool. So then there you have it, audience. We're going to spoil who the killer is, and then
It's Mark.
A few moments later.
Now you're just gonna lie to them?
Yeah.
It is not Mark. I'll say it when the character gets introduced.
Yeah, for sure.
But that way I can also talk about like instances where they're referencing something that will come into play later. All right. Smash cut. The war is over in Europe. So, the movie opens with like a newsreel style thing about like some ship that's bringing 15,000 soldiers back from Europe after World War II is over. It's kind of an interesting thing because it is basically talking about how they left their lives behind to be heroes, but some of them are coming home to sweethearts that gave them Dear John letters and dumped them, and they'll have to try to restart their lives. Like, I sincerely doubt that was in one of those propaganda reels. Like, it's almost no chance they brought that up during them. Anyway, smash cut again. Dear John letter as read by Rosemary. And to their credit, she never says the name of the Dear John that she's writing the letter to, which is why the mystery's intact.
Would have ruined the movie.
It would have, yeah. I mean, yeah. As soon as you met him, it's like, oh wait, that's the guy's name.
This guy.
Rosemary's doing a Dear John letter for this mystery beau. Then we cut to Avalon Bay is the name of the town. June 1945, and it is the night of the graduation dance. I believe they say night of the graduation dance.
Mm-hmm.
Because later on they're going to say
college, by
night
the way,
of the graduation date. Yes, it's the local college, which really threw me off at first until they showed dorms. I'm like, okay, okay. So this cop isn't dating like a
that's kind of why I said that, because like the first time watching this, I'm like, what the fuck? I'm like, holy shit!
No.
And then then he went to the dorms, and I'm like, oh, all right.
Oh, all right, cool. So less creepy.
It's not one of those.
Still looks like a fully adult man, but like that's fine. But anyways, I mean not adult man, like old man. But anyways, there's a soldier pulling up with his date, and they mention a bunch of names like about somebody named Linda dating some guy with a Cadillac. None of these names mean anything yet. This is just letting you know that there's like a lot of heartbreak flying around to give you kind of the idea that maybe like anyone could be the person who is the Dear John recipient of the letter. A lot of soldiers and sailors are at this dance. Then there's like a really annoying MC who's like talking between like band acts. That's when he brings up Glenn Miller, and I'm like, is that a character in this? And then I realized that Glenn Miller was a big band leader who like died in France. So they're just playing one of his songs, but he's not a local to this fictional town. Or actually, is Avalon Bay a fictional town? It might be a real town, actually. Because I think they wanted to film there, but they couldn't because they ended up filming in like New Jersey or something. Oh, here we go. The movie was filmed in Cape May, New Jersey, and included the use of some of the city's old Victorian buildings.
Yeah, and I've been to Cape May, and you can tell like from it's actually pretty cool.
Oh, okay. So I think that the idea was that I think that Avalon. Yeah, here
it's a coastal California town.
Yeah, so Zito wanted to shoot the Prowler in Avalon, California, where it's set. However, he decided to shoot it in Cape May, New Jersey. Yep, because he thought it had a ghost town quality.
Oh, it's actually pretty creepy, because all the houses are like really old, and
it's because all those people got murdered.
Yeah, well,
you'll have that. So yeah. Anyways, now we finally get to the point where we meet Rosemary. She is with her new boyfriend Roy. And he's saying the place is dead and we should leave, which is sort of weird because it's very much not, and people are just arriving. But I think we all know what he's got planned. Intercourse. So then, anyways, then the MC says something really mean about the drummer of the band.
Yeah,
he says that he has to be sober now, so they need to do swing dancing to make him feel better about his sobriety because he's not allowed to drink anymore. It's like, man, I hope that's not true because that's oversharing about that poor drummer. But yeah, I was talking about how the guy Roy, who's getting Rosemary to leave, seems like a real piece of work. He was like kind of shitting on some guy who works at the place and takes care of it, and that's when Rosemary tells him that he takes care of this place and sleeps on a mattress in the basement. There you go. That mattress is gonna be important later, because, or at least I think they're talking there. They're talking about Old Man Turner.
Yep.
Who then is a young man Turner and apparently creepy, but doesn't mean that Roy has to be such an ass about it.
Well, so I have to ask you now, because so he says that this place is getting dead comment, right?
Yes.
About when she sees, like, doesn't she see, I don't want to say the character's name, but doesn't she see him at the dance?
You think so?
And that doesn't,
because later on the way he talks about him is like in a way that suggests that they don't know that he's even back from Europe yet.
Okay, so maybe it was just her friends. Like, she saw that, like, maybe those are the people that pulled up in that car in the beginning, because she definitely saw people at the dance that she was going to go over and talk to, and that's when he tried to pull her away.
Yeah. Well, it could be anybody then, but yeah, because I thought she was going to talk to Turner, or the person we will later learn is Turner. In any case, she wanted to talk to somebody else, and he pulled a real alpha move and made a woman do something she didn't want to do, because that's how men are supposed to act. Then what was it? Roy's rich, so instantly won my heart, because he tells Rosemary that he'll buy the hotel for her if she likes it. So I'm like, great, like, hoping this guy gets killed. Guess what? He will. Then Roy is talking about how his dad has even more money than her dad, and that her dad is jealous of his dad. I'm like, man, they can't kill Roy fast enough, because I am losing my mind over here.
I felt that way too.
Yeah. There's a woman from earlier who asking where her date Pat is, which actually remark on Pat's name, because we later learn who Pat is. Pat is the owner of Kingsley's.
Mm-hmm.
So, and this is another, and I'll just tell you right now, Pat Kingsley is not the murderer, but this is another red herring that he's not here when a murder is about to happen. So jot that down. Roy wants to go skinny dipping, but he insists that's actually a joke. And then they head to this like gazebo that's kind of like on a little island outcropping out in the water, kind of. Then we get a nice cut to some dude with like heavy boots and a pitchfork approaching, but we only see his feet, so we don't know who he is. The Prowler man cuts the lights that are running out to the gazebo to make it dark. Obviously, Rosemary is sort of alarmed by this, but Roy doesn't care, and he tells her to stop playing hard to get, because they apparently had a previous encounter on New Year's Eve, which, by the way, this is like, what, June? So, like...
Right, and she wrote that letter to him in March.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
I didn't realize the math on that.
Yep.
Well, there you go. So he's trying to get her to sleep with him in the gazebo. Roy says, yeah, if your friend... This is when he says, if your friend from Europe ends up showing up, he'll wish he were back overseas. And there's a funny cut, because it cuts the MC asking, hey, is anyone alive out there?
Yeah.
Because I guess like the place is dead, but also these two people are about to be dead. Then this is a pretty cool kill, because like Roy is kind of like not like on top of Rosemary, but like above her, and the pitchfork is stabbed like through Roy's back and into Rosemary. So it like stabs through him into her and then out her back. It's like, man, this dude has some strength behind that pitchfork.
Yeah,
which
like,
we will later learn that strength doesn't go away in the next 30 some odd years when it's 1980.
Oh, it was wild. Like the force at which that went through. Like that scene is like, because like a lot of these horror movies, there's like a slow build, and like, man, you got like 5 minutes, and then wham, like pitchfork right through the fucking back. It was awesome.
Yeah. And I thought that Rosemary got a glimpse of him then, because she seemed to like recognize him right before the stab.
Right.
In any case, the killer places a rose in Rosemary's dead hand. Cut to the modern days, and by the modern days I mean 1980. So a while ago, but so they're starting. There's like a sign is getting hung up as women are preparing for the next graduation dance. We get introduced to Deputy Mark London, who's kind of weird, like, but not weird in like a scary way, just weird, and he kind of seems like a dork. So he helps two of the women, and I think the two women that he's helping are, let me think. One of them is definitely Lisa, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's Lisa, and I want to say the other one was Sherry.
Yeah, I think you're right. It is Sherry.
Because I think Carl comes after that, and Carl is Sherry's boyfriend. Yep. So I didn't make a note of Carl at the time because I didn't realize that he would really be important. But and this is when I put my notes. He seems to be, and then Pam comes out to greet Mark, and they seem to be flirting each other. And I was like, hope she's not in high school. And then edit, she's not. She's in college, so marginally more okay. So Pam has like the graduation edition of their school paper, and the deputy wants her to go to lunch with him to read it to him. And I didn't really understand that. I guess there was like a joke because his eyes are too tired from like looking at the sign, so he can't read a newspaper. Yeah, their relationship seems not weird at all. But before they go to lunch, Deputy Mark says, "I have to check in with the sheriff or he will kill me." Foreshadowing. Yeah. And that's foreshadowing, and let me tell you why. Sheriff's the murderer.
What?
All right, let's. All right. So,
what?
Spoiler alert: Sheriff is the murderer. Who would have thought? I know it seems crazy, but
I can't wait. Very soon is my favorite foreshadowing.
You have to point out if I didn't catch it. Because are you talking about when the sheriff's at Kingsley's?
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Okay.
That's like my favorite line.
So at the police station, the sheriff is talking about how Major Chatham would have stopped the graduation dance if he could. This is where we learned this is the first one since the incident in 45. But apparently he had a stroke and is like not as capable of exercising his influence, because we learned earlier that Major Chatham was quite wealthy and probably involved with the school in some way.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so that's where the audience, we can kind of put together that he was Rosemary's father. And put a stop to like further murders should like dances continue. This is where the sheriff brings up the next set of red herrings, which is he explains to Mark that there's a kid that got cut up and his car was stolen in a nearby town. So he's going to be leaving Mark in charge, but he wants him to like keep an eye out and to contact the state police if anything weird happens. I guess at this point they kind of announced that Mark has been the deputy there for 2 years, and the sheriff says that he has to fish to start the summer. Like, so there's that. I'm assuming that fishing is by that means he has to murder to start the summer.
Yeah, that was one thing I thought of. I'm like, okay, like thinking back,
it's like, hey, if he doesn't kill some fish,
he goes other places, just kills people.
It's like when if he doesn't go somewhere and kill something, he's gonna kill people here.
What a crazy movie if they did that for like a sequel.
Like, yeah, just do like in the intervening years he's like been killing people in other towns. So yeah, Pam wants Mark to come to the dance later, even though he'll be on duty, which, you know, that's what all the kids want at their dance is a cop. Yeah, she's worried about Mark since in case the Prowler that cut up the kid will get to him. This is when I think, is it Carl that shows up with a bottle of alcohol talking about them spiking the punch bowls and hiding it from the chaperones. And this is where I was like, these are seniors in college, right? Like, why do they have to have chaperones? And why does it matter if they drink? They presumably all of legal drinking age. I do not understand. That's why I think this movie went through like a rewrite period, because maybe one of the things was like, ooh, and then the cop has a relationship with this high school student. They're like, whoa, creepy. So they're like,
yeah, it
never
was
mind,
weird.
it's college now.
Yeah, I think. Well, so like one thing this movie does really well is it doesn't spend a lot of time explaining stuff, and like in a good way. So like some movies, they just kind of take for granted like that you know or care about this stuff, and like this movie does a great job at like it just kind of like glosses over some details, and they're just like, yeah, whatever, just keep moving.
I just assumed it might have been at a college like Westminster where it's like, you can't drink on campus. It's a dry campus. Or even IUP was a dry campus. like on the actual campus grounds.
Right. So, that I kind of like, whatever, I buy it, so I wasn't too, or maybe one of them are juniors or something, right? You don't know. So, or sophomores.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
But anyways, yeah, we cut back to Sheriff and Mark talking about, how Mark's going to be in charge, minding the shop and whatnot. He says that he thinks the worst thing that Mark will have to deal with is kids running wild from the dance. And then the sheriff and Mark end up going to Kingsley's together because the sheriff says he has to pick up a couple more things. And this is, so they go into the store, they meet Pat. So Pat from earlier is now an adult man because his time has passed. Pat is the owner of Kingsley's, and he has a guy named Otto who does deliveries for him. And Otto's too busy watching something on a TV and doesn't feel like doing a delivery to the major because he's like, the major can wait since he's in a wheelchair. Like, hey, Otto, not cool, man. Like,
yeah, chill out, Otto.
Yeah, I mean, we learned that Otto isn't cool, but he actually maybe isn't so bad because Otto's he's one of our red herring characters, as we'll find. So whenever George and the sheriff are walking out, two of the girls are walking in. I think it's Lisa and
Sherry.
I think it's Lisa and Sherry again. I don't know why I can't remember her name at all. But yeah, so Lisa and Sherry are walking back in, and the sheriff. This is actually, in my opinion, a really good kind of bit of foreshadowing because the sheriff says that those girls don't seem like Pam's type of friends or whatever. She doesn't seem like their type. And he kind of gives them a look, where he's clearly doesn't want, when they walk by him in the doorway, he moves away from them. And I thought that was a really good piece of physical acting to kind of show that he is got some issues here. He obviously has issues with women, and that's what's kind of making the massacre he'll commit happen. But again, you don't know he's the murderer, so you'd have to see on a rewatch, or if you knew going into it somehow that this is why the sheriff is acting so dodgy around these girls, is because he wants to murder them, and he will. It's important to achieve your goals,
So I have an interesting question we can bring up later, but
if you want to stop me now, you can.
No. It's
right
at the graveyard scene.
People. Okay.
Yep.
So this is where I actually put the name. So Carl is dating Sherry, blonde girl is Sherry, brunette girl is Lisa. I finally got all their names written down. Man, it took me so long to actually put them in my notes. Okay, so now we're in the dorms. They're talking about how Major Chatham is always staring at them from his windows, which we'll later learn is not that he's a pervert, it's that his daughter was murdered, which, by the way, they know about that. It's a local scuttlebutt thing that everyone kind of knows that his daughter was murdered, right? So it seems really insensitive of Lisa to then scream and take off or open the front of her shirt to show her chest to poor Major Chatham, because they should know he's just concerned for them. So
yeah, but then they didn't have to do the jump cut to him staring at it. It's kind of, so I think that was also another.
Well, he recoiled a bit.
Yeah, but I think they were trying to make him out to be a creep too.
Did you think that the stroke and the wheelchair thing was actually fake? That he might have been after them?
No, I didn't think it was fake. We do
get a scene with him later where he's around, but he is wheelchair bound.
Yeah. Anyways.
Yeah, I mean, there's plenty of moments like that. But this is actually a really cool sequence, in my opinion. You let me know if you feel the same way. So it's a cut between the Prowler suiting up, getting his boots laced up, getting his gloves and stuff. And it's and it cuts to the girls getting dressed for the dance. And I really thought that was an interesting, kind of cross-cutting between those two events. They're both getting suited up for their evening's activities.
Yeah. It was cool.
Yeah.
Every shot they did with the Prowler, because they never show him fully until a little later, right? You get pieces or if they do, it's from further away. There's never a full shot until later. So I think the suiting up thing was cool because it I don't know, it allows you to use your imagination to kind of fill in some gaps that I think are pretty cool. That's a cool technique.
Yeah, I don't think we'll see him in full garb until after the next couple of kills.
Yep.
Because that's when he pursues Pam. But yeah. And interestingly enough, just kind of diving into this. So during most of the pursuit scenes of the Prowler, it was like one of the assistant directors that was in the suit. During all of the kill scenes, it was actually Tom Savini in the suit. And the reason for that is because he was the one who would enact the special effect work. He was the one who knew how to perform it in a way that the effect would go off without a hitch. So rather than teaching an actor how to do it, he would just do it himself.
Awesome.
And then
That's so cool.
Yeah, and then in the last scene, it's Farley Granger, fully
Right.
kitted out and because he wasn't wearing it like most of the movie, which is really interesting. Yeah,
So
that was like I wish I'd remember the name of the assistant director. That's kind of
you missed my favorite red herring, or like, what were we calling them?
I mean, red herrings are fine. I mean, that
Yeah.
is what it is. Misdirect, if you want to call it that.
Yeah.
But
Okay.
what was it? What did I miss?
All right. So when the sheriff is leaving Kingsley's and they're trying to do that weird like dialogue between Otto and Pat, when he gets in a truck and leaves, and right after the sheriff says that line about the girls, Pat says to him, "Hey, why don't you try using the bait to catch fish this time?" Because apparently he never catches anything, which I thought was so cool. Like looking back, like he just kind of like, so everyone's like, "Oh, he must suck at fishing. He goes every year and never catches anything." I thought that was pretty interesting.
Oh, that does kind of feed into the idea that he's just like using it as an excuse to leave town and do
Yeah.
whatever he needs to do.
Yep.
And then like that's why this like dance is like what's bringing him back home for it. That is fun. I like that idea.
Yep.
I didn't even really pick up on that.
Proceed.
So Sherry is still in the shower or whatever. So Pam is like, "Hey, do you want me to wait for you?" Sherry says no. She likes to make Carl wait. Carl being her boyfriend. So it's like, well, I have a bad feeling how that's going to go for her. There's kind of an interesting jump scare here where, this is kind of one of the first of many scenes that involve a lot of like cuts that may or may not be fake out cuts for something that either is or isn't watching her. So in so many of these cuts, we're either in a real POV of a killer or someone stalking, a fake POV, or we're getting tricked into getting misdirected into a jump scare, which usually I don't like. But whenever you do the work like that, I actually don't mind it so much.
Yeah, they built tension so well throughout this movie.
A lot of long shots. Yeah.
Yeah.
I was just going to say this one is like one of the first ones because she's walking out of the building. She hears something behind her. She's so focused on what's behind her, and we are, that we don't realize when she runs into somebody who's in front of her.
Yep.
So sorry, what were you going to say though?
Well, so one movie that did this really well, some people don't like this movie, which I don't understand, is The Strangers, which came out, I think, 2006 or 2007. And they did a lot of like work with like building tension over long shots like that. Because the movie really only takes place in like 4 rooms, right? So there's like the bedroom, the hallway, and then like the kitchen, living room kind of area. And this movie does a great job at building that tension, and then it releases that tension quickly, but then builds it back again. So like The Strangers did kind of like an opposite thing where they would build tension quickly, and then you would think, oh, there's no way that's going to be like a jump scare, and it is, right? So so kudos to a lot of these filmmakers and directors for like using like, again, long shots like that to help build tension. The music really helped in this too. A lot of really good strikes. They did a great job with the strings, like trying to keep everything like really tense. Like you're always like kind of on the edge of your seat. So I absolutely love these scenes, especially in the dorm. And then in the house later, but
yeah, and I'd complain in the last movie about how there wasn't enough synth music, and it's, I love myself some synth music, but being an earlier 80s movie, this one is like, it was using a lot of actual like, instrumentation, but I thought I was using it effectively as opposed to the Supernaturals, which was just doing Civil War knockoff music. So way better off this way. But yeah, no, I think that there are plenty of directors, that see this kind of work and get the right lessons from it. But there are also a lot that get the wrong lessons.
Oh, for
like,
sure.
You can easily squeeze out a jump scare on somebody if you do the cheap thing, which is to rely on the fact that the audience perspective is restricted to whatever the director is showing them. But if you do the work and you ratchet up the tension and you like make the audience like live in that moment, that takes skill. That doesn't just happen because you haunted house something in front of somebody like out of nowhere. So I think this one, and I'm surprised I thought that The Strangers was rather well received, because that in particular, like some of those long scenes of like was it Liv Tyler in the house, and then like you see that burlap sack guy just like walk into the corner behind her and then just walk away, and it's like, oh no.
I mean, when she shoots her brother-in-law or best man, whatever, like which is actually Dennis from
it's Glenn Howerton.
I know this isn't a Strangers, but that's like one of my favorite horror movies, that and The Conjuring. But yeah, when they play that long scene of like her in that room waiting for someone just to walk through there, or was it him? Did he shoot? I can't remember who shot the. I'm pretty sure it was her, wasn't it? No, it was him.
It was him. Yeah,
it was him when he shot his best friend, basically.
Yeah.
So, but this movie does a great job at doing stuff like that too, where it kind of like you kind of in your mind you're like, this is how this is going to play out, and they do a lot to like subvert that, or eventually get to that point, but they do it in a way that you're not expecting, which kind of makes it a lot more effective. But yeah, there are a lot of movies that do that like cheapishly. I think.
And there are plenty that do it effectively. I just think that it's easy to do it cheaply, to just rely on that as a shortcut and not to treat it like the tool that it is. But anyways, the jump scare, but it wasn't the Prowler. It was actually, I have in my notes that it was Carl, but it wasn't Carl, was it? It was Paul. Wasn't it Paul?
I don't remember. It was Sherry's boyfriend.
Oh, so it was Carl? Okay.
It was in the dorm?
I knew he was in the dorm, but I thought that the person that she ran into outside the dorm was Carl, or was Paul.
No, you're
okay.
You're
So
right. No, you're right. You're right. You're right. It was Paul.
Because it wasn't just Paul. Lisa was there too, right?
You're right. It's
and
Paul.
Then the others. So it was Paul, but the person she heard that she was turning around, that she probably heard anyway, because we assumed it's the Prowler. But then we get a scene of someone sneaking into the Prowler, or what we think is the Prowler, walking down the halls towards the room into the bathroom while Sherry is showering. But then we get a jump scare, and then that's Carl. So probably the person that Pam had heard was Carl going in, but she was so focused on him that she didn't realize she ran into Paul and then Lisa, and I think the other two people, what was it, Sally and Ben. So I think it was all of them were there getting ready to go to the dance together. Oh yeah, but then anyway, Sherry's like, get on in here, Carl, let's do the sex. So then he goes out of the bathroom to get changed, but as soon as he shuts the door and sits down to like start getting undressed, he gets grabbed by the Prowler, and there's a pretty messed up effect where the Prowler takes is like holding his head and like stabs a bayonet through like where like right where like when you're a baby, the soft parts of your skull came together, and just like down through his head and out the bottom. And it's like in most of these movies, they like are like, okay, and then they're dead. And it's like, no, he's just dying now, bleeding, while the Prowler holds his like mouth shut so he can't yell. And it's like, oh man, that's so great. And it like had come out the bottom of his jaw and stuff.
And the eyes.
And his eyes are like roll back in the back of his head because of like probably the horrific pain. And then the Prowler, just being the real piece of trash he is, just like grabs Carl's pocket square and cleans off his bayonet.
Yep.
Because he's not done here, let me tell you.
So like in terms of like kills throughout the movie, I think these two were my favorite. Like I think they're the best. Like well done.
Yeah,
it was pretty wild.
They're like,
I did not expect that the first time I saw it.
No. And that's the thing, is like they're almost like, I think that especially like the way like neither of these characters die instantly. Like these are gruesome, cruel kills. And, you know, we have Tom Savini at the helm here. So they look, even today, even all these years later, still like hold up really well.
Yeah.
So, yeah, but then here's the really gruesome one is like, and probably this one's probably my favorite kill. So the Prowler just opens up the shower door and Sherry's in there, and he just like takes his pitchfork and just like stabs her clean through. And then as she's like screaming, he's like lifting her up.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, oh man, like that's like, and then she's like, and like I said, she doesn't die right away. So it's like taking so long to happen.
Yeah, it was this scene. I mean, the rest of the movie is really good, but this scene here, because I'm like, okay, we had the cool pitchfork kill in the beginning. The first time I watched this, I'm like, all right, that was a pretty cool kill. I don't know what else we're gonna get into. And it was like, wham! I'm like, holy shit! And it was like, boom, boom, like right after the other. So, definitely, probably, in my opinion, and I could just be a little biased. This is probably some of the best like slasher kill scenes I've seen.
I believe I'd have to check my my notes again, but I believe that even though I'm not a Tarantino fan, those two kills are considered two of his favorite slasher kills. Just the effectiveness of them, and I would agree. I think that those are two very effective kills. Like, and that's one of those times that that like because Tom Savini, having served in Vietnam and stuff like that, like saw a lot of stuff happen. So he's leaning on the knowledge of things he'd seen over there to like make these kills even more like gruesome and realistic and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And he does it. And there's always that like bit like where, especially in these movies, like the blood doesn't quite look right. But with these two in particular, it doesn't actually affect it, in my opinion, just because there's like a lot of blood, but it's like the focus is more on like the brutality of the slaying and not necessarily the physics of it, which I think hurts another kill that'll happen later a little bit, but not really that much, because I also like another one that's coming up quite a bit. Anyways, cut to the dance. There's a band playing. They have a very 70s vibe, I felt. This is still 1980 that this is taking place, which, by the way, the movie was released in 81, but everything that's happening is taking place in June of 1980. I don't know if I mentioned that earlier. I think I did. But yeah, so there's still like a very 70s vibe to the band. So Deputy Mark instantly is going to shirk his duties and go straight to the dance, despite the possibility of potentially stab-happy prowlers being afoot. But he gets grabbed instantly by Lisa while he's on his way to see Pam, and Lisa makes him dance with him. And Pam is like annoyed, but he like looks at her and can tell she's mad and just shrugs. Like, you're not trapped, dude. Like, you can leave the dance floor. There's nothing that requires you to be there.
It was such an uncomfortable dance too. Like,
oh, you're saying that Deputy Scarecrow over here hasn't got the moves?
Like, literally, I watched it and I'm like, oh my God.
You just get the feeling that Lisa, who already seemed like she wasn't that cool of a friend, is also still a pretty bad friend.
Yeah, we all know those.
During that time, Paul is spiking the punch while Pam is there. Once the dance is finally over, Deputy Mark, did I say Mike earlier? I might have said Mike on accident, but yeah, Deputy Mark is getting punch, but then Lisa comes up behind him and bumps into him accidentally, air quotes, so that he dumps the punch on Pam. So she's obviously not pleased and goes back to the dorm room to change. Then there's some side stuff about Old Man Turner, about he's talking to the chaperone, Miss Allison, and explaining that like, oh, this reminds me of the good old days. Like,
right.
So that's just a side thing, just to make him a possible red herring later.
I know we keep going back to the dorm kill scene, but I know we're there, but like the fact that she goes back to the dorm, like misses all that stuff, right? And they don't even find, and I'm sorry, I will spoil this. They don't even find out until the end of the movie that her friend Sherry was killed.
Okay, so yeah, so what happens is she goes back to, she's like announces to, presumably what she thinks is Sherry and Carl, in the shower together, is like, don't worry, I'll close the door or whatever. So she just goes and shuts the door, not realizing that, both of them are in, because she sees Carl's clothes. Somehow not enough blood that she's suspicious. There's a little bit, you can see some, but not enough that she notices it. And she doesn't notice the blood like on the walls when she goes to shut the bathroom door, because she's like, I'll shut the door. And at that point, the Prowler had moved Carl's body into the bathroom. And that was actually, so the scene what he's doing is his ritual where he lays like a rose onto Sherry's hand. Now she's dead. this was all actually shot as one scene with the rest of the kill stuff. Like it was intended to be one scene, but they actually re-edited it to make it like this, where like the tension is even more knowing the Prowler is in there staging the bodies and doing all the stuff that we'll see later is what he did.
Yep.
So it's actually a really cool scene, this whole like Rose thing while she's in the other room getting changed. So once Pam gets changed, she's leaving out to go out of there. And then she hears a door close and hears some creaking. And I'm like, oh, she's finally being a bit suspicious, because she was not suspicious about, the bit of blood and like the lack of voice or anything coming from her roommate and her boyfriend. Like it seems so crazy that she didn't get even a little bit suspicious. But then she looks back up to the top of the stairs she just descended, and it's Prowler. So our first look at
that shadow was so cool.
Yeah, you first see his shadow, and his helmeted shadow, and then she turns around and then boom, Prowler. So boom, Prowler, new catchphrase. So then she runs around like yelling for some of the other people who live in different rooms. All of the rooms are locked, no one's there, they're all at the dance. She tries to go to an exit door and it's jammed, and every other door she tries to go to is jammed. I'm like, is this before fire codes existed? Like, how can you have like residences that like have no, like where all the doors just painted over so they'd all like be jammed at the right time? So she's on the run. She finally does get outside. She finds a door that isn't jammed. But then she gets grabbed by Major Chatham in his wheelchair. He's like holding onto her dress, and like she's like screaming, trying to get him to like let her go. And I have zero idea why he's doing any of this, other than to just make us think later like maybe he's involved.
Yeah, right.
Because he's not like telling her anything. He's just grabbing her, and like
we can't talk yet. A stroke.
Yeah, I guess he can't talk, but like he's clearly just upsetting her more, and she's clearly running from something. Spoiler alert, it's a Prowler. Pam is once again looking behind her while running, and this time she runs into Deputy Mark. She explains, that she saw a spooky man who was pursuing her, and also the Major. Then Mark goes to investigate and leaves Pam in his police Jeep. Is it a Jeep that he has, or a truck? I think it's a Jeep, right?
Yeah, some kind of Jeep.
He returns and explains that he saw like the Prowler's footsteps and saw like, oh, of course we get a jump scare where Mark opens the door. That one was a little cheap. That one I don't know if they really earned that one. There's other ones I think they earned a little better than that. But when he gets back to the Jeep, he jump scares Pam and explains that he found the wheelchair marks and the boot prints. So at least we don't have one of those situations where he like tries to gaslight her into, it was probably just a prank. It's like, no, he finds evidence and he seems on board. I think a lesser movie might not have had him be on board.
So I don't think that was a cheap scare. And at first I felt the same way, but they do that to her a few times in the car. And I think that's to disarm you.
So you think that that's establishing that the car might be safe then? So that later on when something happens with the car, it's not as safe? Or just to establish the fact that she's constantly going to be getting jump scared in this car?
I think both, but I think it was more to disarm the audience, like, because it happens again a couple times and you're just like, but I think the one that happens at the graveyard is way more effective because of the one with Mark. So you expect it to, you know what I mean?
Well, it also establishes that she never locks the doors when she's in there, which is super easy to do and will come into play later. So he goes back into the house. Mark goes back into the house to investigate if Sherry and Carl are okay. But he's not able to get into the room, right? The door at that point is locked because there's a reason he doesn't discover their bodies. Yeah.
Correct.
So the door is locked.
Yep.
So check it out. Prowler's been locking doors behind him. Keep the bodies hidden so he can get some more kill counts.
Well, I have a theory about that, but we can get into it later.
Okay. I mean, it's up to you. You can bring it up now if you want to.
So I don't think Pam, my memory could be foggy on this, right? So the only two roommates that he kills are Lisa and Sherry, right?
I thought that Lisa was in a different.
I thought they were adjoining, like they were like those adjoining rooms, like kind of like a.
Oh! So you think that they have like a suite and then the bathroom is like between them? Okay, gotcha.
So because at one point Sherry's kind of hanging out with Lisa in that room, she flashes the guy, And then was Sally? There was one other girl that was with them, right? It was whoever.
Yeah,
was
Sally
living with
is
Lisa.
the other one. Yeah, Sally's the other one.
Does Sally get? I my memory's kind of. I don't think she even is really involved in the rest of the movie, right? Or is she?
Only later when they give us another moment where we think that there might be a different possible murderer.
Yeah,
and there isn't. It's just another creep. Just
right.
another creepy person.
So
in
like,
town.
I don't think Pam or Sally were the targets. I think Lisa was the target because like because I think, and we'll get into this later, but I think Lisa was the target and Sherry, not Pam and Sally. And I think Pam was at the wrong place at the wrong time at the dorm.
And that's possible. I mean, we did establish, like, knowing what we know and who the sheriff is, like, that he definitely did not like those two in particular.
Yep.
But yeah. So anyways, Mark returns and they head off to Major Chatham's house to question him, which they probably beat him there because it seemed like a very long driveway and he is wheelchair bound, but there's no answer at his place again, because he's probably not there. And I don't think we ever find out where he is, right?
Nothing.
Like,
you never see him again.
He's just gone. He's like Lawrence Tierney or whatever. He's like, I got my paycheck. I'm out.
Yeah.
So,
I was going to ask you about that. I'm like, did I miss something? Like, you never see him again.
No. And they just like B&E his house like twice. Like, so it's like, what is he going to do? Stop us? He's in a wheelchair.
Yeah.
So, so they,
well, my favorite thing is like, I wonder if he's upstairs. It's like, come on.
No. Okay. The cop checks for him upstairs twice.
I know.
Are you like, there's not any, I don't even, I'll get into it as we go through the plot, but like, this dude is not the crack police officer that you, I mean, I guess that's what you expect from like a spooky town like this, but man, right. Like, just that he goes upstairs to check once, is like, it doesn't look like anyone's been up here for years or something. And then he's like, okay, I gotta go see if I can find the major. And he goes upstairs again. Is like, were you dropped on your head, deputy? But where was I?
They break into the house, so they're breaking.
Yeah, they went through the window, right?
Yep. In the back.
Yeah, they go through the window. There's a quick sting scare where they yell for the major, and it cuts to the Prowler turning around, meaning he's in the building. So the Prowler is in the house, which I think is meant to be another like red herring that maybe the major is faking and is actually the Prowler or something. Mm-hmm. But they never really follow through with that version of it. And there's some additional like stings of like whenever Pam moves to another room, like the Prowler's like turning, which are interesting, but like they don't do a lot with that. Just kind of establish a sense of place for the Prowler there. That's when Pam finds pictures of Francis Chatham holding a rose. Maybe it's related to the roses that keep being left on the bodies. Oh wait, yeah, they're just gonna tell us now Rosemary is her middle name, so she just goes by it. And then there's a pressed rose that's like the rose that was left on Rosemary's body, which Pam had wrote about in the article that she had written about this, which is the first we're hearing that she wrote an article about this murder. But apparently she's annoyed with Mark for not realizing it. I get the feeling that he's just not a big reader because he doesn't seem to read any of her articles for the paper.
I feel like Mark doesn't do much as a person.
No. Well, what he does is mess up, because that's when the first time Pam suggests that Mark call the sheriff, and he's like offended by it. Yeah. But like, I guess at this point he doesn't know that there have been murders, so I guess you could forgive him it a little bit. But like, still, there's something afoot here. But we go back to the dance. Our man Paul has drank too much and is throwing up in the bathroom. Lisa storms in and is upset with him, which is interesting because I understand that, like, you know, maybe she doesn't like the idea that he got drunk, but like he did a lot of like telegraphing that movement. And maybe if she wasn't too busy trying to steal her friend's man, then she could have stopped her man from getting too drunk. But she's done with it. She's going to go to have a swim in the pool, which is the first we're hearing about a pool. But then at this point, Pam goes and tells Miss Allison, the chaperone, Miss Allison, about the Prowler, so they can warn everyone.
Such a cool scene.
Yeah. Well, did you hear the song the band was singing, by the way?
No,
It was creepy.
Oh,
it was
about wanting to,
about wanting to make a woman bleed. I'm like, did the sheriff write this? But anyways, and I still question the reasoning for having a chaperone at a college dance, but whatever. Maybe it's just a really religious school or something.
I agree with you. No, I think it was a rewrite.
Yeah, it's just weird. I think it's just an excuse to have another spoiler alert, another murder. But then the dance, Miss Allison announces that everyone has to stay inside. There's a Prowler boot. But she says it literally right after Lisa left to go to the pool.
Mm-hmm.
And this is kind of a cool little bit because the other girl, the least memorable one of them all, Sally. So Sally is talking to her boyfriend Ben and is like, should we tell Miss Allison that Lisa left? And Ben's like, nah, don't worry about it. Paul's gonna go out with her. Except Paul tries to leave and his sloppy ass gets stopped by Miss Allison and Old Man Turner. I do keep calling him Old Man Turner, and that is not what they call him in the movie.
It was Mr. Turner, right? I think it was.
I think it's just Mr. Turner or just Turner. Yeah, whatever. And then Mr. Turner yells that he wants Paul arrested because Paul's being belligerent because he wants to go out to where Lisa is. But he doesn't articulate that again because he's drunk. And this is kind of like, basically this is all the things that kind of lead to some additional deaths. So Mark wants to placate Turner. So he arrests Paul for public intoxication, I guess. It's not really public. I think he tells him later it was for disorderly conduct because I guess it was a little disorderly, but it didn't seem like it was that bad. I think that Mark's just kind of a pushover and maybe shouldn't be in law enforcement. But anyways, we get to a scene of Lisa swimming in the pool. Everything seems to be chill, except she goes, I'm sorry, I shouldn't laugh at this. She goes to climb out of the pool and gets booted to the face by the Prowler. Like, what did you think of that scene where she's just like surprised?
The weird flailing underwater was kind of weird. It was like, when like you have I don't know if you're like with a younger sibling or like cousin or something, and they're like trying to do tricks underwater and they're just doing weird movements. That's how I felt like when she got kicked in the head. She was just like spinning around and doing weird shit underwater. But yeah, I thought, I mean, it wasn't amusing, but yeah, it was kind of, I kind of didn't expect it, to be honest with you. But yeah,
no, because she didn't even like see the Prowler until she gets up the ladder and he just like boots her in the face. And I was like, did they just kick this lady in the face? And I actually looked it up. Did you look up how it was done?
No.
They're like, oh, she was actually hit in the face, but the foot was a fake, like it was like made out of like
or something.
It wasn't foam. It was like made out of like a gelatin cast.
Okay.
So it moved kind of like a foot, but that's why there's only one cut during that. And it's like the cut of the immediate impact because you see everything around the impact, but they do a quick cut during the impact. And it's because the foot looked goofy, but you do kind of see it. And I was like, did they just kick her in the face? Or no, they didn't because we didn't see it, right? And it's like, oh, they did hit her in the face with the foot, but it wasn't a real foot, which I thought was cool. But yeah, so then Lisa doesn't see the Prowler anymore, and she starts moving towards the ladder, and the Prowler like pops up out of the water. Really cool effect, very like Jason Voorhees popping out of like Crystal Lake kind of thing. Like he's just there. And this is pretty gruesome too. So he like has the bayonet and he's like cutting her throat. And my problem with, especially considering that Tom Savini did these effects and he did the Friday the 13th, like the original effects. Yeah. There were like some throat cutting scenes in both, but there were some things about that effect that I didn't think was effective as this. There's something about this one where it looked to me like it was like in her throat and he was like sawing it. I was like, oh man, like he must have learned some more like tricks like to conceal the fact that he's not, because he's obviously not murdering this girl. But like just that the way that scene was shot, and so like, and then there's like blood like falling out of her throat into the pool, and then like even the way the blood, like I said, like I have a lot of problems with these older movies with the blood effects. They always look a little bit off, but the way that the blood hit the water in that looked a lot like blood. It was like interesting. And then she kind of like sunk down and like the wound is still there and there's like blood coming out of it. It's like, oh man, like that was another one, another pretty gruesome kill.
So I'll ask Adam, like friend of the show and special effects guy. like how they could have done this, because what I thought was interesting is a lot of times when you see these kills, all of the special effects happens outside of the water, right? Specifically, this one, it started outside of the water and then finished underwater. So they were able to get that effect to happen underwater. So there's like no makeup, or if it's makeup, it's like water resistant or something, because they were able to do some pretty crazy stuff underwater, which you don't see a lot in horror movies, because it's really hard to do that stuff underwater and make, because like some of the stuff, like they'll use like corn syrup or something, it like dissolves, right? It's
Well, they
soluble.
basically had to do it in like, that, and they had to do it in like one take,
Yeah.
because the way that the amount of
Yep.
blood in the water changed as the scene went on. So
Yep.
they basically had to like get it in one, and they'd have to like probably drain the pool
Reset,
and do it
yeah.
again. Yeah.
Yep.
And we talked last time about how some of these effect shots were so involved, they took like an entire day of shooting to get a scene like that down.
Yeah.
But this one, I feel like they even had to do less, or they couldn't even reset it, because the actress who plays Lisa, after this was shot, her skin was like dyed like bright red from the blood. And it took like a few days for it to go away.
That's funny.
Yeah. So it's like some of those things about practical effects, like you never know what's gonna happen. Yeah, so gruesome kill. Finally we get a cut to Sally reporting to Miss Allison that Lisa had left before the announcement, and had gone to the pool. So Miss Allison goes out to get her. That'll probably end well. Paul's being arrested, and he makes another one of those Hawaii 5-0 jokes. Says "Book 'em, Pamo."
Yeah.
Like, yeah. So it's like, oh, that's funny, since we've made similar jokes on this. But Pam laughs at that. I'm like, are you charmed by Paul, or maybe she's just trying to make Mark jealous? Doesn't matter. We go to a scene of Sally and Ben. This is what I told you earlier, is like Ben is trying to get her go down to the basement with him, since they can bone down, because apparently a lot of people do it, and that's a good reason to do something like that. So they're going to the basement to try to find a mattress that's allegedly down there, or like a hidden place, which is kind of a callback to earlier when they talked about a guy who is a caretaker for the place and has a mattress downstairs that he sleeps on. See, all of it comes together. This is all one tangled web of facts and incident here. So we get back to Prowler doing some creeping, and I was like, who's he gonna get? Because I couldn't tell if he was like, because like we get some prowling shots of the creeping, and this was actually indoor creeping.
Mhm.
But then Miss Allison is outside because she gets to the pool. She sees the bloody pool and goes to run away, but then she runs by some bushes, and the Prowler just grabs her and then stabs her in the neck. So she's gone. This one wasn't the best kill effect. It was pretty good, but like we mostly get a shot, like the camera kind of goes down to her feet, and like we see the blood. We don't get a lot of actual shots of the effect. I think the only thing that was interesting was like before was a slash with the bayonet, and this is a stab into the throat with it. So pretty good. So that's when Mark explains to Paul that he's being held for disturbing the peace, and that was when I was like, I thought he was being arrested for public intoxication. But Paul's terrible jokes finally annoy even Pam. This is when we see Sally and her boyfriend are making out on that mattress they found out, and the person who was creeping around in the building was Mr. Turner, Old Man Turner himself, down there watching them make out on, I guess, his bed. I don't know. So like I just like said, so Turner was revealed to be a creep, as I suspected. Because he kept talking about the good old days. It's like, there's no one who would think these are the good old days unless he was a creep. So that's another red herring, because we've established he's not the murderer, but he did have like a similar POV shot that we'd seen the Prowler use. So he's another suspect, along with whoever the actual Prowler is. I don't think at this point we've learned that Prowler had been apprehended by the state police. That was now Pat Kingsley shows up to the police station, and says that a bunch of college kids are up to no good at the cemetery, which I feel like it kind of goes without saying that if you're at the cemetery at night, you're probably not up to much good. And this is kind of like the first time we've seen Pat since the store, and he's got a very different attitude this time around. And I think that's why he's kind of intended to be another suspect at this point. So, Mark goes to investigate the cemetery, leaving Pam in the Jeep again. Again, she is not going to lock the doors. Mark finds an open grave, and there seems to be like a fake out scare because it seems like someone is sneaking up behind him based on the camera movement, but that is not ever really paid off in any major way. It's just another way to use camera techniques to kind of fake out the audience. So Mark goes into the open grave to try to open up the coffin. By the way, this scene was actually filmed in a cemetery, and the open grave they used for this is an actual open grave that had been dug to have someone be buried in it the next day.
That's like the Savini special, dude.
He
like
just
George
loves
Romero
using
did
real
that too.
stuff. Yeah. These guys know. They know what's up. It's just so funny though, the idea that like there's a funeral tomorrow. Like, we better film tonight, baby. Let's get in there. But that's super funny that like they just sort of use an actual like open graves. Then that's cinema verite, baby. Then we go to the Jeep, and there's someone who seems to be approaching the Jeep from behind. And this is why I think they did the scene with the sheriff or with Deputy Mark, and it turned out to be nothing. So that this time, when it turned out to be something, we're a little bit more surprised. And it's Otto from the store before. And what a weird scene, because he's like going into the vehicle and scaring the hell out of Pam. She screams and runs, but he makes no attempt to explain what he's doing. It's like, can you imagine how many things in this movie would have gone differently if people just explained why they were being so creepy or weird? But no, Otto just wants to be a creep for no reason and to make the audience think maybe Otto is the killer. So yeah, Pam goes out to the open grave with Mark, deciding that the open grave is safer than the Jeep at this point. Which is interesting that Mark didn't want to go back and ask Otto what the deal was, but I think he was too focused on opening up that coffin. Coffin's opened up. It's Lisa's corpse, throat cut, she dead. And then Mark notices the rose on the gravestone, suggesting that it's Rosemary's grave, which is something that Pam later explains is in fact the case. Then Mark returns to the police station, and he's trying to call.
So she had she had a rose with her too in the casket.
Oh yeah. Well, there's also a rose on the.
Yeah, but I mean that his calling card, so you knew for sure. Like, but like, this is like why I think that the original targets were Lisa and Sherry, not Pam, and I think Lisa was the main target the whole time. Because like, why would he go through all that trouble? Because obviously he's trying to reenact the killing of Rosemary, like for sure, right? So
which
like,
is interesting though, because he also had it out for Roy during the killing of Rosemary, like because Roy's actually one who's killed first. He stabs through Roy to get to Rosemary.
Yeah, but I think,
but he doesn't seem to be as concerned with attacking their boyfriends because he doesn't make any effort to murder Paul,
right?
As opposed to Carl, who he did definitely want to kill, but Carl was just kind of in his way.
Correct. So I think the targets were, and you can see that he has a misplaced hatred for certain women, and I think the reason that Major Chatham was watching Cindy all the time is because she kind of looked like Rosemary. So I think the target was Lisa the whole time, and I think they kind of
who's Cindy
or Lisa. So that's the actress name. I'm sorry, Lisa.
Oh yeah, sure. Her name was Cindy.
Yeah. So Lisa. So I think that's why Major Chatham was paying so much attention to her, is because she kind of looked like his daughter. And I think,
gotcha.
I think they kind of hinted at this by putting her in that casket, because he didn't do that with any of the other bodies, right?
No, he just left them where they were.
Correct. So this one had a little more like
it's more significance.
Yeah. Right. So I think she was the target. I think Pam and Mark and pretty much everyone else is wrong place, wrong time, honestly. Which is even creepier, right? To me, because this guy's like, I'll just kill whoever's in front of me. Because if you watch the other like slashers, if one thing they established in the late 70s in these movies, or mid to late 70s, is these like slashers just kill everyone. There's no rhyme or reason. They're just killing because that's them, right? So I think adding some like agency behind the Prowler of like there's like a mission or something they're trying to do makes it a lot more, in my mind, makes it a little more creepy. But yeah, I still think that, and we'll get into something that happens later that makes no fucking sense. But I think that's the reason why. So that's kind of how I put it all together. But in my brain, I could be
All
wrong.
right. No. And yeah, we can move on since we're getting close to the pieces starting to fall together here. So the Mark tries to call the sheriff at the lodge where he's staying at. The guy who's working at the lodge is not interested in helping. He's playing solitaire. He says, I just started. I don't know who's here. And whenever he says, well, can you go get the sheriff? Whenever Mark's like, hey, can you go get the sheriff? He's like, sure. He puts the phone down, pretends to have the gate slam, sits there and plays solitaire a little longer, slams the gate again, is like, he's not here. So, but like we as the audience will later learn he isn't there. He's murdering people. But
right.
Yeah, so it's so funny how unhelpful that guy is. After leaving a message with the guy to give to the sheriff, or thinking he did, I don't think the guy writes it down.
I like when he's trying to find that pencil.
Yeah.
It's like in his ear. It was pretty good.
So then Mark decides to try to call the state police. So Pam goes in to talk to Paul. Luckily for her, Paul's asleep because that'd be a really awkward conversation. Explain to him that his girlfriend is dead. Mark says the state police will be there in half an hour, and goes to the dance and leaves Pam there while he goes back out to the Chatham house, or at least that's his plan. Pam will not allow it. And it's an interesting scene because they don't actually have an argument about it. She just stands there and he just like kind of, tilts his head to the side and is like, all right, get back here, you rascal. Come investigate a murderer with me. Like, it's like such an interesting scene. Oh, by the way, something I didn't mention, I probably should have. The state police announced that they've actually already apprehended their Prowler. So the murderer is not the Prowler. So that's why the state police are actually going to be like, all right.
Or he is the Prowler. He's just not that Prowler.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's the kind of thing, is like the Prowler referring to the Prowler that is the first red herring that we see, or is the Prowler the name of the villainous man who's doing the murdering?
We'll never know.
Or we can just pretend that it's whatever we want it to be. Oh, yeah. So Mark leaves Pam downstairs and goes to check upstairs again. Even though earlier he had said it seemed like no one had been there for a long time. There's no like wheelchair access to the upstairs. All of the furniture upstairs has like sheets on it, that you do when you're not using rooms. It's ridiculous.
Well, and they did this the first time. I didn't bring this up. And they did it again. They really love that door at the top of the stairs.
Yeah, that very first one.
Yeah. And so apparently so does the Prowler. So.
Well, yeah, that time, I don't think the Prowler was there. This time the Prowler is there. Because I thought the Prowler was in a well-lit room before when he was doing all his reactions to like sounds. But in any case,
I don't know. I'm pretty sure it was the same room. He's just been there the whole time.
The Prowler, well, other than when he's murdering folks.
Because I think that's her room, right?
I don't know. It seemed like it had a lot of furniture in it.
I don't know. Anyways.
Yeah. In any case, the Prowler like takes out his bayonet, which gives you the idea that, he's going to have the jump on Mark. This is kind of an interesting scene because like in the office where she had found all the stuff about Rosemary earlier, Pam's like walking and the way the camera is moving and following her, and there's like not a lot happening, but like it's kind of she's moving slowly, the camera's moving slowly. It's kind of unnerving. The lights go off in the house. Mark starts flipping the light switch like the entire power didn't just go off in the house. Like I said, Mark isn't our smartest guy. Like he's not the brightest bulb, but there he is. He's doing his best. Mark gets jumped on by the Prowler and gets taken down. I wrote here that it's not clear if the Prowler finished him off or not. We'll learn later that he hadn't, which I don't really know why, other than because the Prowler's the sheriff. He just didn't want to kill his buddy. Like it's the first time he's shown any restraint on his murders. He's usually doing them quite gruesomely.
See, I think like if you know anything about like serial killers or like, I mean, typically though, I mean, they would probably kill anyone that got in their way, but like, I don't think he gets any fulfillment from that. Like, I think he's driven to kill these women, not Mark.
Well, he killed the hell out of Carl, buddy.
Yeah, but he was in his way, right?
Yeah, I guess so. I don't know. I mean, it's clear that this dude's having a psychotic break, probably brought on by like PTSD.
I mean, definitely not probably. He for sure is.
Anyways, Pam sees some jewelry hanging in the fireplace below Rosemary's picture, and she tugs on it because there's no way this can go wrong. She certainly didn't find a empty coffin that belonged to Rosemary earlier, and shouldn't be surprised when the decomposing corpse of Rosemary drops on her from the chimney flume. But she does, and she screams quite a bit about it. So she goes to try to run and opens the door to that room, and there's the Prowler holding a rose, and he's like, "I'm here for our date, Rose." So it's like, yeah, this man's going through some stuff. And also, I didn't realize he had more roses. That's good to know. The Prowler's chasing Pam through the house. This is a very tense scene, by the way. This chase sequence.
Very.
Yeah, like I think at some point Pam goes into one of those rooms where like the sheets are covering all the furniture.
Mm-hmm.
She finds a place to hide, and this is why I didn't think that this was Rose's room, because the Prowler seems to have no qualms about smashing everything, trying to locate Pam, because he just starts like wrecking everything.
Oh no, I meant the room at the top of the stairs that they kept focusing.
Is that not
on.
where she's at, or did she go to?
No.
Oh, she went to a different one. She went
down the hall where, so like you go at the top of the stairs, you make the right,
and then you make another right.
There was those double rooms that were adjoining that had all the furniture in there.
No, you're right. That's my bad. There's like a random rat that suddenly shows up and walks over to Pam. So you think,
solid Indiana Jones scene.
So you think, oh, is she gonna scream because of the rat? But like just like in Chopping Mall, when all of the like snakes and spiders from the pet store were crawling on Kelly Mulroney's character, but she stayed quiet so the robots wouldn't find her. So too does Pam. She stays quiet. She doesn't let that rat blow her cover. So let me see. She goes to make a run for it. This time, once the Prowler seems to be going to the other room, he chases her. She finds a room, and she's actually like got some good tactics here. So the door, he has the pitchfork, and he has the pitchfork like through the door.
Mm-hmm.
And she's like, I'm not gonna be able to probably stop him from getting in, but she's like, what I can do is break the top off of this pitchfork. And she like slams the door on the pitchfork top and breaks it off, which is really cool. But now she's like in the room. Prowler's advancing on her with his bayonet drawn, because he had more than just a pitchfork, guys. And then Otto, who was creepy earlier, just like rolls in and just blasts the Prowler with a shotgun. And I was like, oh man, like, so Otto wasn't a creep. And in probably one of the goofiest scenes.
Yeah, I was going to say, we have to talk about it. Like the weird music and like the weird head nod, like
it's like him and or her and Otto are just like gazing into each other's eyes and like smiling and giving like subtle head nods to each other and stuff while like the music is like swelling. And it's like, is this a romance now? Or is like, did we miss something? Like, do they have some kind of connection? Like, this is the same dude that scared her so much she fled earlier. And it's now like here to like have this very sweet scene that there seems to be no like basis for.
Don't worry, it doesn't last long.
Yeah, but fortunately it doesn't matter because the Prowler sits up and blasts Otto with a double barrel shotgun. We didn't
fucking blast him, man.
Just blood everywhere. Just like, it was wild. But yeah, then but luckily Pam goes into Jason Bourne mode and just like stabs the Prowler in the back with the pitchfork. So Pam and the Prowler are struggling. She does manage to get his helmet and mask off, where it's revealed to us it's the sheriff. And honestly, there's a lot that's just kind of left up to audience interpretation here, because we never get any explanation from the sheriff about what's happening.
Yep.
Like she sees it's him. She was like, sheriff? Like, she's surprised. We're surprised, unless you haven't seen this movie and you let me spoil it for you earlier, which, what are you doing? But
you're surprised.
I'm surprised. But the struggle for the gun, ends with Pam finally gets the upper hand, points a double barrel shotgun at his head, and just blows it to bits.
Yeah, like gone.
Just exploded his head. And so there's a lot of fun facts about this head effect thing. So they had to do like a cast of the head to actually destroy one, obviously. And apparently Farley Granger, the actor who played the sheriff, had claustrophobia, and it was very difficult to get him to like agree to do a cast of his head. And during the scene where they blow off the head, that fake head they created from the cast there, Tom Savini used an actual double barrel shotgun and blew it to pieces.
Oh my God.
So it wasn't even like a fake gunshot.
That's
that was
so
like
awesome.
real. Yeah. So Tom Savini like literally blew his head apart. Like, man, that headshot, like it really reminds me of if you remember from Dawn of the Dead.
Yeah, I was just thinking that. I was
that random headshot.
Literally just thinking that.
And that was like one where like they had planned to use that like head. They were gonna destroy it later with like a more negative like ending, and then like, well, we have this entire head we can blow apart, so they just do it in a random scene. It's kind of like that, just like out of nowhere, head exploded.
Oh man, yeah, it was wild.
Yes, yeah. Mark's revealed to be alive.
For some reason,
yeah. They drive back to the dorm house. I say dorm house because it is like a house, but I guess it's supposed to be a dorm. Sends her inside while he goes to talk to the state police. Pam finally notices that the shower's been running that entire time because it's like now the next morning. So she goes in, opens the shower door, and sees how their corpses were staged, and it's pretty gruesome. Like Sherry's corpse is like, there and all like bloody and everything. The Prowler had hung Carl's corpse by his tie up on the shower head, and his eyes are all bug-eyed and gross looking.
Mm-hmm.
So it's actually pretty gruesome. And then we get a jump scare where Carl's corpse tries to grab her. But it turns out that was just in her head. But she does scream to notify everyone there's some corpses here. So
like I want to do, I think we should do like a reoccurring segment where we talk about so far, like the best jump scare or best moment. And I think this might have to be the best jump scare so far that we've done. I'm sure we're going to get better ones or different ones that we, would better is so subjective, but like out of like not expecting it, like coming into that. So like, they don't know that her friends are dead. So like they're playing like all that, hey, you made it, everything's going to be okay. And then you get to that scene and like you're in like getting into the shower and you're like, holy shit, what are they going to find? And you see it and that happens to her. To me, I think that's so far out of all the movies we've seen, that's the best jump scare. But,
I'm inclined to agree. I do think that the fact that, well, number one, it was kind of like a reference jump scare. They intended it to be reminiscent of the jump scare at the end of Carrie.
Yeah.
And you definitely have some of that. I would be inclined to think it's cheap because it is all in her head. If only it weren't for the design of Carl's body. Like there's something just jarring about the way his eyes are. And I feel like that is building on the audience expectation that as gruesome as this is, it's not like anything can happen. He's dead. And then for them to do that jump scare, that's what I think makes it effective and makes it like, so that I don't think it's completely cheap. But, cause it is a very, like the way his body is chillingly gross looking.
Yeah.
So when he like reaches out to her but then of course we get like, it was all in her head and the sheriff or the deputy Mark is on his way up to, comfort her because of her dead friends. And then we get like some soft woodwind music to accompany the credits, which I thought was lovely. After everything, we could all use a break. Yeah. So there we go. That was the plot synopsis of The Prowler, which, we've kind of gotten into talking about a lot of things we like about it. So maybe it's time to move into
Judgment categories.
good one?
Great one.
All right.
Let's
So,
kick it off.
Yeah, as our audience knows, that we assign a letter grade to 5 categories. They are story, acting, effects, writing, and then cult factor, which is that little X factor that makes these sorts of movies extra special. So let's kick it off with story. You got any thoughts?
Man, it's gonna be. I'm not trying to do this, but I don't know why I loved this so much. And you have to watch this movie twice, because the first time you watch it, I don't think you pick up on a lot of things that are happening. Maybe you do, and you're very observant, but probably, and I think it was kind of filmed that way on purpose, but like a lot of the stuff that's going on has purpose, but you don't always know that purpose until later, which is, I think, is so cool to have that kind of playing in the background of, because the whole time you're like, who is this? Why are they doing this? They're not explaining this to me. You get little pieces of like exposition, but it's through like letters or like photos. So you're never actually sure. So there's always that like in the back of your mind, like this guy just might be crazy and just starts killing people. Like, so I would go A. I don't know.
I'm actually inclined to agree. I think that there is a lot of interesting plot details going on here. I think that it's easy to get sort of tired of the number of red herrings that they put in there for you, but so many of them are established like kind of naturally that it's honestly not even that the movie is telling us that these are red herrings. It's that we are inferring it based off of our knowledge of these sorts of movies. And yeah, so I'm definitely, I'm there. I think that also it's so interesting to have like a veteran who's a jilted lover who's clearly suffering from PTSD to be the villain of a movie.
Yeah.
Like, especially since like, I mean, the lionization of The Greatest Generation is like complete. Like even then it was like a real thing. So the idea that this guy who served in World War II like is also a murderer, like it's just such an interesting take. And so I'm inclined to agree. I would say this is an A.
Good shit.
So, yeah. That brings us to acting.
What are you feeling?
Honestly, if one of our lead actors wasn't the actor who played Mark, I could have probably gone A, but man, that dude is just such a goofus. Like, it's kind of hard to say A with him being such a pivotal character. But at the same time, that is also what that character is, right? Like, he's trying to prove himself. He's the new deputy. He's only been there a couple years. He's trying to fill in for like this like long-standing sheriff. So it's kind of hard for me to tell if it's like bad acting or if this dude is just a goofball. That said, I think Pam is pretty solid. The actress who plays her is doing good work. All of her friends are appropriately insufferable, but in mostly believable ways. So there's just a lot of background characters that are kind of forgettable, and then they're either forgettable or creepy in order to be either to be murder fodder or to be red herrings for misdirects for who the actual murderer is. So I'm gonna say B, but I could be convinced into A if you can really make a case for the sheriff's deputy guy.
This is where this gets muddy, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think that, yeah, I don't know how much if it was him or the character. So taking him out of the picture, right? This is the perfect example of less is more. So you don't have these crazy scenes where they're doing these like back and forth dialogues, like long, like a lot, right? Or you don't have these longer scenes of just like exposition, other things, right? So in my mind, it's like, okay, did I believe Pam was scared out of her mind and was trying to run away and was surprised that it was the sheriff? Of course, right? Did the sheriff kind of play it off as a maniac, like threatening the other cop that he'll kick his ass the other side of the state? Like, yeah, it was weird. Like, but it worked for me. So like, I hate to do this. I think it was an A And like with Mark's character, like the way I kind of rationalized it in my head was he seemed like some kind of like, no, I don't want to say flunky, but kind of just like go with the flow. Like he was probably in college with all them and is older, right? And then kind of stuck around and just got a job being a deputy. And obviously the sheriff put him in charge because he is incompetent, right? So, because the sheriff, if like if he was a super competent deputy, he probably wouldn't have made such a big deal about the fishing trip and all that stuff. He probably would have found another way for him to handle it. So I don't know. I would lean towards A, but I could do a B. I get it.
I don't know. I think you kind of convinced me. If the sheriff is somebody who has this like dark past and possibly continually dark present, like if we're going to assume that our theory that he is still doing murders is real, then he wouldn't want to have a very competent sidekick or whatever. So I think you talked me into it. I think you talked me into an A for acting. Well done, sir.
Thank you.
Next up then is effects.
I mean,
is there even a question?
Yeah, right. Yeah,
it's Tom Savini. Like, these are great. These kills are gnarly. Some of them are truly like, I can't believe how many of them hold up as well as they do. It's so crazy.
Practical effects.
Like I said, I think there was only one kill that was kind of a dud for me, and it was just like the Miss Allison one just didn't seem that inspired, but it was still gruesome.
But was it not inspired because of how inspiring the other ones? Well, okay, so hold on. So let's use a different word. So was it that lackluster because the other kills were so crazy and planned out and thought out? But I think that kind of plays into what was happening is he didn't plan on killing her again. I think he had targets and he had to do what he had to do to keep moving and going through to get to the targets or not, just finish his mission, right? Which plays in the whole PTSD thing. So I think he just grabbed her because she was out there.
Yeah, that's true. She saw the body and was trying to get away and would have reported what he was doing, and he wasn't done yet. He hadn't staged the body
Correct.
like he wanted to. So no, you're right. Yeah, he just needed her out of the way. This wasn't one of his targets. So as soon as she came around the corner, he grabbed her and he like dispatched her with swiftness. So you're right. I'm wrong. Like, but it was never gonna not be A anyway, though. Like for the effects, really. Like even if one kill wasn't up to my standards, but even then, you talked me out of that too. So A for effects. Writing.
This is all you, man. I don't know.
Again, I kind of got into a story, which I guess story and writing can be a little bit too similar, but there's so many like nuggets that are put through that pay off later, and so many ways to keep the audience guessing and stuff like that. And it's not so overwritten that it restricts the ability for them to do like interesting things with the camera work and interesting things. Like they tell stories in so many ways, and I'm sure writing is involved in all of that. Like there are like directions and for what the writer intends for a shot to be, but the idea that like the writing for all of the things they sprinkle in and then the cinematography is able to play along with it so well, I probably have to say A for writing.
Yeah, I agree with you. Again, less is more, and I think they did a great job. When things happened, it was impactful and there was purpose behind it. It wasn't just there to fill like screen time. So yeah,
I think the only thing that was kind of goofy is we never really know why the hell the deputy keeps going upstairs to look for the wheelchair bound guy.
Or what happened to the wheelchair guy.
Or even where he is. I guess kind of a dangling thread.
If we ever meet Tom Savini, because I'm hoping through this journey that we're all taking together that we end up meeting him, and we can ask him like, hey, the fuck happened to Major Chatham?
So, I mean, there are plenty of conventions. I'm sure we could meet him. It's not out of the realm of possibility.
Just find him.
All right, but last is cult factor, and that's that X factor that I mentioned.
Yeah.
I mean, come on, it's got to be A, right?
100%. Well, you're waiting for me to say, nah, it's a C. No,
I was gonna see. That'd be really funny if you did after all of that.
No way. This is gonna go down like you were talking about movies you're gonna watch all the time, and like again. I like slasher movies. I'm not like obsessed with slasher movies. Like some people, like that's their genre, and I get it. Like, more power to you. But I like the Halloween, like the original. I like Friday the 13th. I like the older. I don't want to say simple because that's not the correct way to kind of like them constantly trying to one up themselves in terms of story is where I think they run into trouble. So when you have something like this that's very effective. It knows what it is. It doesn't overstay its welcome, and they know why you're there, and they do a great job at making sure you're entertained while you're there. Like, the kills and all the other stuff that's planned out, like the jump scares and stuff. I I mean, this is just a phenomenal movie in my opinion.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. And I think that this one is underappreciated. I think that it is part of like the the slasher golden age. And I know that there's a lot of people who get kind of tired of the slasher genre, and I'm actually one of them. And this one, and this one was actually one that I hadn't seen before we started our podcast. I actually was starting to look for movies that were a little bit out off the beaten path in order to do it. And this one was one that I had found through that. And I'm so glad I did, because this
Yeah,
is
me too.
underrated. And yeah, this is like just one of those movies that it's going to be on the rotation. Like it's probably high on my list of like slasher faves now, like probably easily like top 5. Because like I said, so many of the slashers are either too prototypical or all of this thing. And this one, for all of like the cinematography tricks that it uses, all of the you know the the little nuggets that it places through like the acting and the story and the cuts to different people, and it all kind of fits together. And I think that subsequent watches will only improve that. So yeah, this is it. It's in the rotation. I'm there. So A from me.
Yeah, I think this is kind of why this movie is kind of why we wanted to do this show. Not only for us to find cool movies for us to watch and talk about together, but also to shed light on some of these like hidden gems. Now, I guess obviously like the term hidden gem has different, different connotations, but again, I like horror movies, and I really didn't know anything about this movie. I knew it existed, and I knew Tom Savini worked on it, but I'd never seen it. So yeah, I think to me this is the perfect example of like why we're doing this show. So
Well then, I guess that means it's time for our next segment, which we didn't use the letter D at all in that, so we can't really segue into
the
it as
A
naturally
roll.
as yeah. But this is the D roll, which the D roll being, of course, the last hat on a hat that we do, where we put things into one last category in case you didn't have enough categories from the judgment categories. The categories for the D roll are cult classic, B movie, grindhouse, or trash. Trash, obviously, right? No.
See ya.
No, I think it's no surprise where I'm standing on this.
This is called classic for sure. But so the gore level in this is high, right? And I mean, obviously most slashers are going to be, be in that category. I think that's not for everybody, but again, outside of the gore kill like scenes and stuff, this is still a good movie. Like even if they like cut away from, like, obviously you wouldn't want that, but even if the kills were less, it still would be a good movie, right? The story is cool. The whole like the atmosphere, everything they do with it's good. So like if you take out the immaculate special effects stuff, it's still good in my opinion. So yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's very capably directed. I've mentioned the cinematography a number of times. The music is, not my usual favorite, but I think that it's very effective. There's like almost nothing really to complain about other than the characters make some weird choices. And I think I've mentioned many times before is like, that's the genre. Like they're going to do some stupid stuff. Like we know it's going to happen, but like all in all, like there's a lot of, this is just a quality movie. And I'm actually surprised because of how many writers work on it. Like usually the thing with Hollywood movies is like, if you have more than a couple writers, it's going to start to fall apart. And the idea that this doesn't, that it in fact holds together really well, is kind of a I don't know, credit to whatever they were going for. I don't know if it was like the director making the final call on the set, or how it ended up that so many people, writers, could be involved, but you didn't feel like there were too many cooks in the kitchen. So yeah, cult classic for me all day.
All day.
All day.
All day, son.
All day. All right, but yeah, no. So I think that what we usually do now that we've done the D-roll is we talk about the movie we're
Yeah.
going to cover next.
What's on? What's up?
So
What's on the agenda?
What's on the agenda for the
Yeah.
Tri-Slash-A-Thon part two? Yes, for the continuation of the Tri-Slash-A-Thon, we are actually going to be doing a probably not really as like lesser known as the Prowler is, but still a goodie, and it's called Sleepaway Camp, the 1983 classic slasher taking place at a summer camp, keeping that summer Tri-Slash-A-Thon energy going. This one is very easy to locate. You can find it, let me see, Tubi, obviously, Roku channel, Pluto TV, Plex. I believe it's even on Peacock. I think it's on Prime Video, Crackle. Really easy to find this one. I thought it was on Shudder too, but it wasn't listed there, so maybe it had left Shudder. But still no shortage of apps and free apps where you can locate that one. So have you seen this one before, Shane?
I have not, so I'm pretty excited.
Probably.
Any nuggets of like, hey, what are we in store for?
Probably one thing I'll mention is that this movie is, it came out in 1983, different era, but there are some issues involving LGBTQ plus, all of the LGBT plus community that might not be handled with as much sensitivity as those issues deserve in the modern era. So obviously we are here to have fun, but not be disrespectful. And Shane and I will both do our best as, being two cisgendered heterosexual men to navigate those parts of the issues with the respect that they deserve. And, including pointing out times where this is not cool, this will not fly, and that kind of thing. I just figured I should bring that up just to let any listeners know that there are some things about this movie that don't hold up as well. I still think it's worthwhile as an artifact, and then just as a kind of gory time. But yeah, so I just figured I should bring that up just as a quick disclaimer to anyone that might get into it and not expect it to be maybe a little wrong-headed in some ways. It definitely is, but I still think it's worthwhile despite that.
Yeah, I think like, so one goal we have, again, Stefan said that, is to have fun, but like the channel, like our whole group in general, we try to stay apolitical with stuff. Not because we don't have opinions, because everyone has opinions, but we just like, you're here for a reason, and it's probably not to hear about that kind of stuff. But I think it's also important for us to point those things out and to highlight those things, because it's it's important to know where you came from, so that way you're not kind of heading back in that direction. And I guess I'll just leave it at that. But so if that's a problem with anyone, I really don't know what to say. I guess you can hate tweet us or whatever you want to do. But yeah, I haven't seen that movie, and look, like, I mean, everyone that's listening to this, you've watched movies from the 80s and 90s, and you understand like it was a very different time. I mean, like, even some of the stuff from when we were like I don't think you could get away with some of the stuff even from like when we were in high school, like, I mean, or even younger, like, maybe middle school. Like, look at the Chappelle Show and stuff like that. So I think there's just things like when you look at it like kind of like in a vacuum. But we'll do our best to weed through that stuff.
Yeah, I think the important thing is, like, even if the movie is wrong-headed, we're not going to have fun at the expense of any groups that might be maligned. Sure. And I think that there's a lot to be gained by pointing out why these things are not really this was not good fodder for this kind of situation, not a good portrayal of this sort of thing, or that kind of thing. So as much as we are able to, we will talk about it, and as much as we aren't, we will stay in our lane and just move on. So yeah, I think that pretty much summarizes what I wanted to get at there.
Yeah, definitely. And so just I didn't really talk about this at the beginning of the show. I mean, I always thank everyone for their support. So It's overwhelming. Like, it's awesome. Everyone's been super cool. Even feedback, we always welcome it, whether it's positive or negative, right? So if you can rate the show, share it with a friend. We're here to have fun, and we hope you guys enjoy the ride. And yeah, I mean, that's all I had.
You didn't want to plug your or our Twitter?
Oh yeah.
You know, I feel like you do that.
God.
So you tweet so often, you almost never bring it up.
I know, it's like second nature. So we obviously are on Twitter. You can find us at Darkside Driving. And Stefan, you're at Twitter at Dark Schneid, right?
That is correct. Dark Schneid.
Not Dark Schneider, which is it's a reference to anime, but that person exists, and I do follow them because I almost keep tweeting them about stuff. So I don't know who that person is, but Dark Schneid, not Dark Schneider. So that's probably the easiest way to get a hold of us, honestly. So if you have any questions, suggestions, anything, just, tweet us or tweet at us. I don't know. Sound like a boomer, but yeah. That's all I had. So anything else?
No, that'll do it. I think we're good to sign off. So spooky.
It's your reprise for the second Supernaturals movie.
Yeah. Wait, what?
What?
There's not a second. You get out of here.
There isn't, and thank God.
Yeah.
Well, I've been Shane.
Hey, I've been Stefan.
Spooky.